What is going on, everybody? What is going on? Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, I hope you guys are all doing good today. Let me just send this one thing. All right. All right. The fuck? Okay. All right. All right. All right. That's all taken care of. Everything taken care of. You guys can hear me okay and everything? Yeah? Hello, hello? All right. All right. So this should be a fun one. This should be a fun one. This should be a fun one. All right. Amber, yes. So here's how I'm thinking. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that we're gonna do the ranking here, obviously, but the God Valley incident really hasn't fully broken out yet, right? So we're gonna do the ranking here. Then I think we're going to do this ranking again at the end of God Valley. Okay, so I don't know how many chapters God Valley is going to be. Maybe 5 chapters. I'd say God Valley is set up to be, the rest of this is set up to be 5 to 10 chapters. Maybe, right? So whenever the God Valley battle ends, like ends, then we'll do this ranking again. Okay, so we'll see how our opinions change. Yeah, update at the end of the incident. Yeah. And the way that we're going to be doing it is, I think we'll include all characters. So Emu's in there, Harold's in there. It can be God Valley and everybody that might believably come to God Valley. Okay? Yeah, let's do it like that. I'm peeking a little bit. All right, here. I can take care of that. Hello, hello. Do I want to fuck with? Here, let me see if I want to fuck with this. How about now? Is this a little bit better? I'm worried I fucked the whole thing up. Is this okay? Is this okay? Okay. Let's say this is good enough. You guys let me know if I need to make more changes. Do I think Kaido's in the top 10 or not? I think before I didn't. Before I thought that Kaido is just going to be like the cabin boy of this flashback. But now I think that... now I think Kaido is definitely pretty high up. I think Kaido makes the, like, outside of Rocks himself, I think Oda showed us the top 4 of Rocks, which is Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, Shiki, not in that order, but I think Kaido makes it. I think Kaido's part of the list. So, and it makes sense because I feel like, okay, what age was Oden when Oden's flashback started? What age was Oden? Let's see. Because Kaido, I believe Kaido generally scales to Oden in terms of like they're the same age. Oden seemed to be maybe a tiny bit stronger than Kaido at the time of their big battle, but they're same age and they're both like monsters from a young age and everything like that. So I think Oden and Kaido are supposed to be kind of parallels in that sense. Let's see. Okay. Age 18. Okay, so Oden at age 18 went into the Flower Capital. How old's Kaido right now in God Valley? One Piece. Kaido age. Kaido's 59 as of the events of Wano, so he's 21 at the during God Valley, right? So how old is Oden at, or how old? So 18 is Flower Capital, the opening scene. 18 is that Flower Capital scene. Then he was daimyo, so Oden was at the age of beating, and I know I got some supers. Let me get to them in a second. Yeah, let's get Streamlike's up to 50 real quick. Yeah, because if we just scale Kaido to Oden, right? They're both established to be monsters from a young age. Both are the same age, right? Both are essentially about like neck and neck at the time of their duel, right? So I think Kaido's a nice little I think Oden's a nice little stand-in for Kaido. And Oden at age 18 was capable of cutting that giant boar in half and everything like that. By age 20, he'd beaten Ashura Doji and conquered Kuri. 33 years before the present is when about 33 years ago. So 5 years after God Valley is when Oden has his clash with Whitebeard. But yeah, if we just go based off like what we saw of young Oden, so I'm just gonna assume Kaido's at least that strong, so capable of cutting the boar and doing all that shit. Anyway, Amr Yasser, thanks a lot. Which trope do you like more? A villain who all of their bravado is just a loser inflicting harm to compensate for personal weakness? Or a genuine sympathetic villain you wish had better circumstances? Neither. I mean, I can pick which one I like more, but I'm going to be honest. I like my villains as villains. I don't need all that shit. I think it's complicated because, like my favorite villain in manga is Griffith. Okay, that's my favorite villain in manga. And, like, I think that's Griffith, phenomenal villain. Askeladd, phenomenal villain. Funny Valentine, phenomenal villain. These are villains where, like, you can understand. Like, some of them even have, like, somewhat tragic pasts, right? You could argue Griffith had not the best upbringing, but we don't delve too much into it. Askeladd, of course, had a very difficult past. But at the same time, actually, Askeladd doesn't fall under this, because I don't want to spoil things, but Vinland Saga's been out for a while. Askeladd might fall under the trope of genuinely sympathetic villain you shed better circumstances. Askeladd I consider not being a villain by the end of it, so I think Askeladd was just a really good character. So if we look at the villains that I enjoy, it depends what you call villain, right? Because, like, what do we call Meruem from the Camarant storyline? Because that's my favorite, like, true favorite villain, but he's not, like... I guess my thing is, if it's a villain that's supposed to be defeated by the hero, then I don't care about genuinely sympathetic villain that I wish had better circumstances. But characters that start off as villains, and then we grow to feel sympathetic for them, and then they ultimately aren't the big bad that needs to be defeated by the hero, I love those types of characters. But if I want a villain that just needs to be defeated by the hero, give me a Griffith, give me a funny Valentine, give me a fucking... I can't spoil on certain series. Yeah, I love those characters. Give me those. Let's get stream lights up to 50 real quick. One thing that I like about Demon Slayer? I don't mind spoiling on Demon Slayer, because I think Demon Slayer doesn't have, like, crazy spoilers in that sense, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think... Like, Demon Slayer... It's really the execution of things that makes it so cool, in the anime at least, right? So one thing I like about Demon Slayer is that it's hard to explain. I don't necessarily love this about... It's a love-hate thing. I think I appreciate the fact that Demon Slayer has sad backstories for its villains, that it does after they are defeated. So a good example was, like, Akaza from the latest Demon Slayer movie. I think I like... It's complicated because, like, I think the flashback being the thing that ends the movie is a little anticlimactic, but at the same time, in terms of flow of, like, character stuff and me wanting to see the villain defeated, I think it's the best of both worlds, because, like, I hate Akaza while we're fighting him, and I want to see him defeated, and it feels very climactic, like, this asshole piece of shit, all that, done, good. I get to feel pure, unadulterated, like, dislike for this character. Then we get the sad backstory, and now it's like I'm looking at him with fresh eyes. I'm really enjoying this character as its own separate thing, etc. So I get the best of both worlds, where, like, I get to feel the pure, just, like, good versus evil, beat the shit out of this piece of shit type of emotion, that cathartic feeling, right, from the fight. And then I get the good character writing, and then the more nuanced emotional storytelling, and, like, the perspective shifting of the backstory afterwards. Okay, so I like that. I like that we got both. Pacing wise, I feel like it fucks up the pacing, but you can't have everything. But yeah, that's like a thing. I don't need villains that I... obviously, it can be really good to have villains that are genuinely sympathetic. I'm not saying that's bad character writing and stuff, but I'm saying like one of the things that I personally enjoy the most about One Piece is that Oda generally does not try to make most villains, feel sympathetic to us throughout the story. He did not do jack shit to make Crocodile feel sympathetic. That's why I love seeing Crocodile get hit with Goma Goma no Storm. I just want to see this dude that's been harassing the shit out of Alabasta and like tormenting Vivi and stuff. I want to see Luffy beat the shit out of him, and I don't want to feel internally bad for enjoying what is happening to him. I just want to see a bad dude get the shit beat out of him. That's what I want. Same with like Lucci. That stuff is good, you know? Like one thing about Kaido, like the Kaido backstory and stuff, it's not a backstory that really makes you feel bad for Kaido. It helps you understand where he's coming from, but not make you feel bad. Doflamingo's backstory, kind of similar in that like you can feel sympathy in the sense that you understand that he went through a lot, but you can also understand that like it's like a somewhat like he was kind of shitty before the citizens did all that shit to him. He was really shitty from the get-go. To be fair, he had Celestial Dragon upbringing and that had already been instilled in him and everything like that, but like I'm not going to feel bad for seeing Doflamingo go down, you know? I think I like, if I have to pick between the two tropes though, which trope do I like more? A villain who all of their bravado is just a loser inflicting harm to compensate for personal weakness, or a genuinely sympathetic villain you wish had better circumstances? I like the genuinely sympathetic villain more than the first one, because I still want my villain to feel... I think generally when a villain is revealed to kind of be like pathetic or whatever on the inside, like a loser inflicting harm to compensate for personal weakness, that takes away one of the things that I personally really, really enjoy from villains, which is just I want them to feel really formidable and put together, and not just like, not just secretly like some loser that's like taking out their own insecurities on other people. I think I just enjoy a villain that feels more put together, it gives a more intimidating, formidable image for me. Now, there's exceptions to all of these rules. There are villains that I like, that are genuinely sympathetic, that I wish had better circumstances, that are done phenomenally well. I have a feeling that Blackbeard is going to be a really good example of that, because already we're seeing the shit that happens with Blackbeard, right? I'm going with on average. On average, I like villains that are villains. I like when they have some more depth, so you get like backstory perspective that helps you understand why they are the way they are, right? The basic why they are the way they are or whatever, but I don't need to feel sympathy for them. I would like to see good destroying evil. That's kind of what I enjoy for these sort of fantasy things. All right, Carnage, thanks for the five. As of chapter 1161, 1 is Rocks, 2 is Garp, 3 is Roger, 4 is Whitebeard, 5 is Garling. By the end of God Valley, 1 is Roger, 2 is Rocks, 3 is Garling, 4 is Garp, 5 is Whitebeard. I actually agree with you for the most part here. I think I agree with you for the most part, except I don't think Garling is going to jump several spots. I'm curious why you think Garling is going to jump several spots. I would say that I'm not sure between Whitebeard and Garling who's supposed to be stronger right now. Rihanna thanks for the 5. Hot take, Meruem is a bad villain and the humans are cruel to ants and don't care, so why would I care about humans trope isn't deep at all. That's not the trope. That's like the surface level aspect that he gives as for why he like thinks the way that he does. But where it goes narratively is a lot more complex than that. Like, it's not just as simple as like, that's the level 1, right? That's the level 1 of what it starts off as, right? What it gets into is a lot of like the nature of humanity, why we care, what makes us fundamentally different from, let's say, ants, etc. Like the strength, like it gets into a lot more than that, right? Meruem is used to illustrate a lot more than that. You say Meruem is a bad villain, and I agree, he is a bad villain, right? In that his reasoning, like, because that's the idea, right? Meruem is a bad villain in the sense that, like, it's just introducing a villain that's like, okay, so if this is where you're coming from, then I agree with you. If you're saying he's a bad villain because it's a kind of one-dimensional character that's introduced, that's just like, why should, the same thing he says to the humans, I think, like, have you thought about, like, the pigs that are slaughtered and things like that, right? I'm pretty sure he says some shit like that. Right? Like, treats humans like humans treat ants, right? That's his basic one-dimensional starting point. So, and that's the point of the story, that he is a villain, right? His character arc over the course of that is very, very, very different, right? His character arc over the course of that makes him... Is this spoiler for Hunter x Hunter at this point? It doesn't matter. The character arc that makes him not a villain, that's where the depth comes from for Meruem. His villain, like, that's the idea. You're right. I'm sorry, you're right. He is a one-dimensional villain, and that's the idea to start with, right? And then the character arc that takes him out of villain status, that turns him into a much more layered character, that's what makes him great, right? But as a villain, he is flat. Like, he's not flat, he's very one-dimensional, right? So I agree with you on that. If that's what you're getting at. Tom, thanks. That's why I don't list Meruem necessarily among, like... He's not a villain by the end. Tom, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 36 months. I'm caught up with the Gachiakuta manga, and it's so good. Amazing art, character writing, comedy, drama, tension, lore, world building, power system, etc. Okay. Fun fact. So, I watched Gachiakuta. I binged all of Gachiakuta yesterday. Not all of the manga. I'm sorry. I misspoke. I binged the anime yesterday. I think I'm caught up on episodes. Gachiakuta, next episode. Episode 13. So I think I'm caught up. So my experience with Gachiakuta was basically... I remember when I told you guys I didn't like episode 1. So I disliked episode 1 till I finished it. Then I was like, okay, I can kind of fuck with this main character. And his start is different than most shonen MCs. So I thought that's cool. Didn't really vibe with the trash stuff or the power system early on. Kind of got interested in the power system because I was like, okay, maybe this will turn out to be kind of like Bleach. Because Bleach, I think, is really cool with the idea that, you know, everybody's sword has a different ability, etc. Gachiakuta feels in a similar vein. Very unimpressed with the abilities so far. I think character-wise, it's still taken me a bit to get okay. My experience with Gachiakuta is basically, I don't want to spoil too much, but like, it's also, I'm really not far through the story, so there's not much to spoil. Initially, not like episode 1, dislike because it felt too generic, but then by the end of episode 1, I was like, oh, it's actually not generic. It feels like it's pretty different start from other shonen MCs and his primary motivation. Then we get downstairs to the trash world, not really vibing with I think I just don't like the whole trash world environment, and like trash creatures are the things that they fight. It's just, there's nothing wrong with it writing wise. For some reason, I just fundamentally find that lame. That's like a personal preference thing, but I'm just like, they're literally in garbage. Their world is garbage and they fight garbage monsters. I was like, I don't know. It's just, there's something not exciting to me about that. It's like, to me, out of all the fantasy world settings you could concoct, that's like the lamest one to me. I feel like Toriko, that's like a food world, for example, right? And even that I find kind of like, okay, so it's a food world or something. And then Gachiakuta is like a trash world, and I'm like, okay, I just don't find this like a fun setting to be in at all. I guess that's it. But that's a personal preference, not a writing thing, okay? Then we get introduced to a cast of characters, and that's kind of cool because being introduced to a squad, it's always fun because it's like, okay, who are my favorites? What's the vibe? What's the group dynamics like? Do I like these characters? Do I like how they interact? Do I like the comedy? Do I like all that? That was like, so far, but not like or dislike enough that I'm interested. I think it's always a good move when, and I see that this happen a lot in manga nowadays, where, you know how like with One Piece, Oda like to do everything slow, so like introduce just Luffy, then next arc just Zoro, then just not, like one by one he likes to piece it together. I think a lot of modern manga like to throw a bunch of characters that's your main cast at you fast, like Fire Force, here's your squad. Black Clover, here's the Black Bulls, right? Like Jujutsu Kaisen to some degree, like, okay, here's all of Jujutsu Academy. Like, I think it's a good move. It's kind of like a modern shonen manga meta move to, like, because they're all competitive, right? They're trying to get their stories syndicated and published, like, and stay in publication and grab viewers' interest fast. So I think it's a good move because as soon as you do that, it's like, here's a full cast of characters right away and you're going to meet them one by one. Like, but you get the image that they're all there and you're going to get to slowly sort through them. It's exciting because it gives you the anticipation of like, okay, even if I'm not loving the characters that I've got so far, I see all these cool characters and designs, and I'm going to get to know all of them soon. So, like, you're getting a preview of all of the characters that you're going to get to interact with. And you get excited at, like, maybe I'll really like this one, or I'm curious what the deal is with this one. So I think that's a good move. So even though I didn't love the cleaners right away, I was like, okay, I'm excited to learn more of what each of them's about. So kind of lukewarm on Gachiakuta. Then it got through its first little arc, like its little battle arc. I liked that. The main character's ability is the only unique and interesting ability that I've gotten to so far in the anime. Okay, I thought that fight was solid. I thought it was a solid starting fight for Shonen, nothing crazy. And then everything since then I've disliked. Not disliked, but I've been bored by. I'm gonna say one spoiler. For anybody thinking about Gachiakuta. This is not to turn you away from Gachiakuta, but this was a deep disappointment to me that happened just this last episode. It's not, I feel like I'm not ruining anyone's experience because it's like, it's saving you a disappointment, okay? There's a squad that's introduced in Gachiakuta that's called the Cleaners, right? This is kind of like our equivalent of, you know, it's just the main squad that the hero is a part of now, okay? And in the squad, you know, like, you've got all the characters. You got, like, the leader character, the big guy character, the girl, all of that stuff. The main character's friend, yada yada. There's one character who's just design and personality-wise, it seemed like he was set to be the cool character, like the cool guy character. Maybe I misread this character or whatever, but he was the one that the series had been saving the longest in terms of revealing his ability. We got everybody else's abilities, but it's like, okay, what can that guy do? So I'm waiting to see this guy's ability because I'm not intrigued by anybody else's abilities so far. The abilities are not exciting to me just yet. Maybe they get exciting, but so far it's just like, this guy uses a stick. This other guy uses a water gun. That's the vibe, right? Some of the abilities are animated really well, like the scissor girl, her abilities, she's got scissor legs. Her action scenes are very well animated, but it's still just scissor legs, right? So I'm waiting on this dude's ability. I'm like, what can this dude do that's not being shown to us so far? So there's a build up, and finally it's like, okay, it's time for this dude to reveal his ability. What's he gonna do? What's his special weapon? What's his technique or whatever? So he does his ability. All it is, literally, is like ropes come out, and he can capture people with ropes and tie them together. That's his ability. And it's like, the way the anime does it is like really cringe too, because like you're waiting on the, like, it builds up the scene, it builds up the moment. Like, he's being attacked by a lot of people at the same time. It's like, oh shit, how strong is he? How's he gonna deal with all this? This is crazy. Like, it's a big moment. It's like, what's your power? Is it like fucking lightning? Is it like fire? Can you manipulate space or something really cool or something like that? And then he like pulls out his weapon, and then some ropes come out of it, and he's just Pauly from One Piece. Imagine if like the hyped up like cool character of the squad was literally just Pauly from One Piece doing rope tricks. That's literally it. Just some ropes come out, and then he captures people in ropes, and it's like, that was my ultimate move, basically. That's it. It's actually insane. It's actually, like, maybe it's just the anime that hyped the character up a little bit. So maybe, Stormy says probably Engine. No, Engine, I think, Engine's fine. Like, he's the umbrella guy. It seems like a basic ability, like, you know, you got a shield, and, like, it's a bit of offense, defense. Like, I feel like his made sense, because he's, like, the character that introduces us to the power system, so you want an ability that's, like, nothing crazy, but clearly strong. Like, I think it fills that niche kind of well. But it's also like, okay, as we go further, you're hoping for some more interesting abilities, right? And it's like, okay, so we got Engine, shield guy, that's cool. And then you meet a new character, he's got a stick. So it's like, okay, so his thing is he doesn't have a really interesting ability, but he makes up for it by being a good melee fighter, right? So, and then you got Scissor Girl, it's like, okay, that's cool, like, it's a blade user. And then it's like a water gun guy, and it's like, okay, are there some interesting abilities? So I'm really holding out hope for that dude, right? And then that dude's ability is just polys. It's just ropes. It's like, maybe the anime just like misled me to feel like that's the guy that's supposed to be hyped up and cool. But I really don't think so, because if you look at the way the scene is set and the series of events that leads to it, like, the group is down bad, they're in big trouble. This guy's the only hope. He's the guy that the author has been saving for the longest time. He's got a cool design. He's got that, like, cool, that anime, cool sort of, like, mysterious character vibe and everything, too. And then it's just his ability. What's the ability? Like, hopefully the ability is something, like, a little bit more upscale than the other characters, and it's not. In fact, if anything, it's like just as basic, if not more basic. Like the Scissor Girl was cooler than that. Fucking Engine, who he started with his umbrella, is cooler than that. It's just ropes. It's just ropes. Does anybody have does anybody have any thoughts on that? Like, is that Fooly Cooly says that's kind of your fault for assuming? I mean, it's not like I just randomly picked this character and was like, this character's cool. I didn't even have, like, high expectations for him initially, but it's just, like, slowly the scene and that little mini arc is building towards this guy's reveal, and this guy's kind of getting the spotlight on him more and more as, like, he seems to be the mysterious one, and he has an ability, and it's clearly portrayed as the best out of everybody's abilities. I don't want to spoil why that is, but the scene pretty clearly establishes that this guy's ability trumps everybody else's, okay? Aether says, yeah, you're judging too early. I mean, what can it, it's just a rope thing. Maybe it can do a lot more, but I was severely disappointed. And I was kind of like, fuck, maybe there's something that exciting that happens next episode, and then I realized I was caught up. So that's my only thing with Gachiakuta so far. I think I'm very lukewarm on it so far. If I were to compare it to other shonen series, I'd say so far, I know I'm saying so far a lot because I don't want to be too judgmental. So far, it's not like a Dandadan, which I thought was really good, really fast. Not really good, really I thought it was definitely, you could tell the quality of Dandadan and like how much more effort it put into the small things and setting things up and character stuff, and abilities and creativity. Because Dandadan's the other series that I was watching recently, right, season 2. I'd say Gachiakuta skews more towards, like, Fire Force in terms of, like, nothing really complex, everything pretty basic, but, like, engaging enough shonen stuff so far. The animation, I think, for Fire Force I preferred. I think I preferred the characters and abilities a little bit so far in Fire Force, which is saying a lot because their only abilities are variations of fire. And plot-wise, I think Fire Force's plot gets much more interesting very fast. So Gachiakuta, I think, for me, skews towards, like, the bottom right now of, like, watchable shonen. But maybe it gets a lot better later. All right. J1 says some characters have some weird abilities, but the way they use it later gets very interesting. The one thing I'd say about Gachiakuta that is the biggest thing that is different from other shonen series is the main character's ability. The main character has by far the most unique abilities in the story so far. Obviously, I'm only 12 episodes in, but it's rare. Generally speaking, most authors tend to want to keep, for shonen manga, most authors tend to want to keep their main character's ability simple, right? Like, pretty much fucking everybody. Gon, Goku, Luffy, Yuji Itadori, like, you just go down the list. Like, it's usually some form of just, like, melee combat, like punching, kicking, things like that. The simplest reason being, if you give your main character, like, a very complex ability set, it becomes hard to write a bunch of fights for them, right? It's only, like, in the final saga that Oda's finally given Luffy, like, tune powers and everything like that, which are that's a very, very complex ability that requires a lot of creativity. Likely because Oda didn't have, like, literally 1,100 chapters worth of Toon Force ideas to use. So everything he's been storing up for Luffy, he can now put on the page, right? But it wouldn't be possible to just write that fight after fight after fight while keeping it fresh. So I think that's the big reason, like Bleach, a series with so many insanely creative powers and really eclectic abilities and everything. And then Ichigo's abilities are just like one. It gets Gatensho. It's just like fight with basic sword stuff, and my main move is a sword blast, It's kind of the same for every character. I'd say, like, the extent of creative abilities for a main character, maybe, like, Naruto's, like, one of the higher ends where it's, like, he can use clones, right? It's still mostly punching, kicking with the Rasengan, but clones add some creativity. and that's because Naruto is it's a more strategy based battle series for the most part. But you generally want simpler abilities for the main character, just for ease of like having fights, just for ease of fights. Okay. Again, like just go down the list. Asta, same thing. Whatever you think of, right? Generally, the simplest abilities are for the main character. The main character of Gachiakuta, I forget his name. Let's call him Gachiakuta. Gachiakuta's abilities are the most creative out of that, and it leads to like, I think that's fun because it leads to infinite possibilities for his fights, you know? JoJo's is a really good example. JoJo's is a really good example where the main character's abilities in JoJo's are actually very, very simple for the most part. So he gets more complex. He plays around with it a little bit more as the series progresses. But JoJo's, so look at where Stardust Crusaders, look at where stands are introduced, right? So when stands are introduced, every villain that the JoJo's heroes run into is some crazy complex ability, like, you know, fucking Justice, or like Oingo and Boingo, or like, Bastet's Maria. Like, there's so many abilities that are very, very eclectic, right? Like, I can go into dreams and control your nightmares and things like that, right? Or I can create, like, Darby the Gambler, like, you sell your soul here, or like Vanilla Ice, or so many complex abilities. And then you look at the heroes, and their abilities are so simple, right? Star Platinum, speed and punching. Literally, like, it's the basic stand, right? The absolute most basic stand. Just punching, right? Polnareff, sword, done, right? Abdul, fire, done, right? The only person with a complex ability is Joseph, because he's not treated as a combatant, right? He's more so for intel and everything like that. So, because it's easier to write, like, if they all have complex abilities, then it makes every stand battle very, very complicated, right? And this pattern, so Jotaro, he only gets a complex ability himself, which is Time Stop, at the very climax of the story. Because you can't give him that from the very beginning, because then you have to write a shit ton of fights that involve Time Stop, right? Which is already a complicated ability to write a matchup for. That's also why in part 4, you don't see Jotaro that often, because he's got Time Stop. It's not just because he's very, very powerful, it's because, like, you only want to bust out, like, the more complicated abstract fights once in a while. Most JoJo's are generally most protagonists of JoJo's are generally some combination of, like, fight with your fists, while other people have, like, something really complicated, like, if I'm above you, then fungus grows, or, like, I exist in a mirror dimension or something like that, right? Araki gives the JoJo's a little bit more complexity with their abilities each time. So, like, you know, Jolene's not just punching, it's punching, but she can turn into string and everything like that, right? Josuke's not just punching, it's punching, but he can, like, reverse an object's effects or something, like, a little bit. So he gets a little bit more abstract with it as it goes, but the JoJo's protagonist abilities are never as complex as the villain's abilities that they go up against throughout the story, until usually the climax, right? So, like, you know, once you get to the end of Golden Wind, now it's a very complicated ability, things like that. Anyway. Interesting, too. Hamon was too linear for more than 2 parts, since how can you escalate beyond cars? Yeah, I think Hamon is also one where, like, he probably, like, it's a fighting style that demands a lot of thinking and, like, creativity for every single fight, because it's like, what's a new way for the protagonist to use Hamon? And that probably gets old after a certain point in time. All right, continuing on. Henchme976, thanks for the 2. What fruit would give Roger the strongest boost? Oh, that's a really good question. Because I don't think it's the Nika fruit, because Roger's not quite like Luffy. I think Luffy is genuinely, the way that Oda wrote him, it is very clear that while the Nika fruit, I think Oda did it perfectly, because while we get to the end of the story, while it's very clear that Luffy has an absolutely ridiculously powerful fruit, it's also really clear that he's the best and only character in the world that can really use it to its fullest extent. Because Luffy's always been like this, almost like this walking, like, Looney Tunes cartoon character throughout the story. Like, nobody in One Piece is as, like, goofy, silly, cartoonish in their natural way of living as Luffy is. And Oda wrote him like that for the entire story, such that once we get to that point, it's like, yeah, it makes sense. It's like, yeah, this is a really powerful fruit, but if you gave the fruit to, like, Kaido, he wouldn't use it as well as Luffy. So I think it makes sense. Even Roger, we don't get the sense that Roger would use it as well as Luffy would. If Roger were to be given one fruit that's, like, a really strong fruit, I mean, maybe, like, just something standard, like the fucking Gura Gura no Mi. Maybe that could be simple. If I wanted to make Roger close to unbeatable, I would actually say the Yami Yami no Mi. I would say the Yami Yami no Mi because with the Yami Yami no Mi, Roger can cancel out any other devil fruit. And if Roger can cancel out any, like, his opponent's devil fruit abilities, then Prime Roger probably beats everyone in the story, right? Because, yeah. Or maybe he would tie with Joy Boy or something like that. Like, because he could only then lose to characters that have Haki as strong or stronger than him. And that's, like, a very, like, you know, like, Roger tied with Whitebeard when Whitebeard had the Gura Gura no Mi, right? So if Roger can cancel that out, then Roger should logically win, right? I guess Garp would be the tie, but even then, Roger should have the edge over Garp because it's not like the Yami Yami no Mi just cancels Devil Fruit abilities. The Yami Yami no Mi also has its own abilities. So, like, if Roger and Garp are exactly equal in Haki, then Yami Yami no Mi should give Roger the edge. Roger and Whitebeard, Roger can cancel the Gura Gura no Mi, which means that Roger should obviously win, right? Because they were tied before that. Roger Emu, I think Roger probably wins because I doubt that Emu has better Haki than Roger, just based on the Joy Boy shit. Yeah, like, I think Roger, you give him the Yami Yami. I'm not saying Roger, that fruit suits him the best, but if you wanted to make Roger basically unbeatable, it would be the Yami Yami no Mi. Because I don't think anybody, I think Roger is at least as good as anybody else in the story in terms of Haki. Maybe it's a dead even tie. But if there's no devil fruits involved, and then Roger also has whatever advantages the Yami Yami no Mi gives him, then he should beat anyone, right? Estelle with a good point. Wouldn't he take more damage from Garp too, though? That's a very good point. So maybe it would still be a draw with Garp, because, like, advantages, disadvantages even out. But if you want to say, like, what gives Roger the best chance of, like, maybe Garp is then a bad matchup, but, like, you know, I think he then allows him to take on characters like Emu, Joy Boy, and stuff. In the grand scheme of things, I think it's the biggest boost. Joy Boy beats him in Haki? I don't know, because I feel like Joy Boy's Haki is probably equal to Luffy's Haki, like end of story Luffy's Haki. And I feel like end of story Luffy's Haki is probably equal to end of story, like, Prime Roger's Haki. Because, like, Kaido already talks about it. The way it's framed, it already sounds like the ceiling that Luffy needs to hit in terms of Haki is Roger's, Prime Roger. Like, that's the way Kaido kind of, what the Kaido fight kind of implied to me. And the other thing is, like, well, Joy Boy's a bigger deal, yada yada, but, like, we already kind of got the sense that Joy Boy's Haki, while crazy, crazy strong, it's not, like, untouchable, because right after that, it's then compared to Shanks' Haki, and it's like, is it strong? Like, we get the sense that it's comparable, right? So if that's the case, then I feel like Joy Boy's Haki, while very high, it's not like some untouchable ceiling. To me, I'm kind of assuming that, like, Prime Luffy will be there. It sounds like Shanks is already in that ballpark, which means, like I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Joy Boy's Haki peak is the same as Roger's or whatever. Same as Garp's. Yeah, I kind of view the same thing, Kingling, Demi-Human. Roger had Haki equal to Joy Boy, but the God Fruit creates the gap. Yeah, that's kind of how I view it. Let's get the stream likes up to 100 real quick. Canute Worgen, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 15 months. Do you think Harold will be a tragic character like Fisher Tiger? It's strange that in Elbaf Castle the doors were locked and the guards seemed to be in on it. The event could have involved a coup. Oh, that would be crazy. That would be insane. I don't think it was a coup. I think it was just because the Dami reverse. I think even Dami reversied him, so they had to fight him. Because Harold was a beloved king during his time. It says that he was the most beloved king in Elbaf history. But I do think Harold will be a tragic character with a tragic end like Fisher Tiger. Goomba Boomba, thanks for being a Yonko member for 36 months. Do you think the God Valley segment would overshadow the main Harold/Loki story and make it feel underwhelming, like the Oden flashback? That's a very, very good question and very good point of comparison. My feeling is that's actually a really fucking good point. Because I did feel like that was the case with the Oden flashback. I'd say a simple difference is I think the Oden flashback wasn't really good prior to Oden leaving, like prior to Whitebeard showing up. I don't think people liked the Oden flashback well, I don't know. I can't speak for people, but there wasn't anything really powerful happening in the Oden flashback in its early chapters. When Whitebeard showed up and then that voyage began, that's when people got really hyped. And then after Oden returned, the very next thing that happened was like Oden fight Kaido, which is, that's cool, exciting. And then the boiling scene, which is a good scene, like a very, very good scene. Great scene. I think a simple difference is that with the Loki Herald flashback, one, it helps that Loki is a character that's already alive in the modern day, so we're already following a character who we're familiar with. Oden was a brand new character. And two, I think that flashback was already considered a good flashback right off the bat, even before Rox showed up. So, because I remember when the reveal happened about Loki's birth and everything like that, people were really, people considered that to be a really strong chapter. So I think people are already a little bit liking Loki's story in that sense. But that's still not a good argument, right? Because the big question is, relatively speaking, will it feel like a bit of a fall off when we transition back from the God Valley stuff to Loki stuff? I think possibly it might be less of a fall off because I think that the events might be a bit more cohesive. So my problem with the Oden flashback, also including the Roger stuff, is that it felt like two totally disconnected stories. The only thing it really served was like it needed to establish just why Oden had to leave Wano, and also it needed to establish why Oden had knowledge that then had to be passed on. But it kind of felt like it's two totally separate plots, okay? Like two totally separate plots in that there's a Wano storyline going, and then there's a Roger Whitebeard storyline going, and then that closes, and then we just continue back with the Wano storyline. The difference I feel with the Elbaf situation is I think there's going to be some more coherence in the sense that these plots seem connected because the center of the the center of this whole flashback dramatically has kind of been Rox and Harold's storyline. Like it began with Harold, Loki's birth, etc., etc. Then Rox and Harold's friendship, etc. And that plays directly into the events of God Valley. Now Rox is set to go down at God Valley, and then we cut back to Harold. So there's a bit more, it feels like the plots are intertwined because it feels like the events of God Valley don't actually just stop at God Valley. We know that Harold and everything is Dami reversied. A lot of people speculate that Harold's going to arrive at God Valley to save Rox. A lot of people speculate, obviously, that Emu might be involved at God Valley, and Emu's definitely involved with what happened 14 years ago with Harold, and Emu's obviously involved today in Elbaf, right? So I think there's a bit more cohesion in the sense that the overall conflict that we're dealing with here continues to be the same. It's stuff that deals with Emu and the fallout of God Valley, right? And what happened with Rox and Harold, right? So I think there's a bit more cohesion there. I think the hype train could slow down, but I think we're set to get some really big reveals once the God Valley incident ends, and then we flash forward to what happened 14 years ago. Not to mention there's other cool stuff that could happen, we might even get to see Loki versus Shanks, depending on how much further we go after Harold's death. So there's still a lot of hype stuff to happen. And I just think that there's more cohesion, whereas with the Oden flashback, it really felt like we're leaving everything in Wano behind, and Roger and Whitebeard stuff, everything they did, it's kind of irrelevant to the Wano stuff, except in a very tangential way. Okay, Oden's coming back with information about opening the borders and stuff, but we never even really find out what that is. It's more you could have airdropped Oden back in from anywhere, and his Wano chapters play out exactly the same. You could have just said, if Oda had written Oden was lost at sea for 5 years or something, and then came back, the entire Wano storyline, the Wano chapters once he returns, plays out pretty much exactly the same plot-wise. Except he doesn't say the final words to the scabbards, open the borders of Wano country. That's the only thing that changes. So that's my hope for why there'll be... I feel like there's already set to be greater connectivity between the events of the Rocks flashback and Harold's death. Let's get stream likes up to 100 real quick. Goomba Boomba... No, we covered this. Carnage, thanks for the 5. Garling, not in the latest chapter. Kind of has to be suspicious that his role in the incident is bigger than we think. He is likely Emu's #1 subordinate. I think he's probably the strongest subordinate. I think he's definitely the strongest subordinate. Also interesting is Saturn should be on this island as well, but he's not here. Garling should be Emu's strongest subordinate, but in terms of rank, he's not yet there, right? He gets there in terms of official rank, obviously in the modern day. But again, it seems like the system so far seems to be... the main militia of the Celestial Dragons is the God's Knight. The strongest God's Knight gets promoted to be the Supreme Commander or whatever, right? And then over time, if you're like a really good, historically great Supreme Commander of the God's Knights, then you get permanently made a God's Knight. You get tenure, essentially, and are made one of the Gorsay, right? So the Gorsay, as far as I can tell, are probably assembled over the course of many centuries as the best Supreme Commanders throughout history over the last, centuries, right? So the best God's Knights over the centuries become Gorsay. And that's also why the Gorsay are also old, because they go through a full, you go through a full career as a God's Knight before finally, like, if you did a good enough job, then you get promoted to Gorsay status, That seems to be what the deal is. So, Garling, while he probably already strength-wise was as strong or stronger than the Gorsay, right? You need to finish out your career as a God's Knight before then Emu kind of like checks your resume and is like, all right, you get to stay as a Gorsay forever. I think that's the sense that I get so far as to how it works. And I do think Garling is set to be a big, big deal in this flashback. I think that Emu is going to be like the big boss, but I think Garling's going to be like the sub-boss. Vishal Anil, thanks for the 10. Thoughts on Buggy having a god fruit, the Roger Pirate stealing it, and him accidentally eating it parallels Luffy. Buggy having a god fruit, the Roger Pirate stealing it, and him accidentally eating it parallels Luffy. His base fruit is the exact opposite of Luffy's, and this is something Oda would really do. Yeah, no, that's possible. That is actually a really interesting parallel. Yeah, that could really, really be possible. That's a really interesting idea. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. I'm still the two characters I'm very curious about right now are Buggy and Kid, because these are characters that a lot of people speculate have some connection to rocks that is yet to be determined, that we can't quite really figure out, whether or not that's just in everybody's heads or if it's a real thing. Nicholas Nick, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 17 months. There are 3 ways that lead one to revolution: heart, mind, and stomach. Dragon's is mind, Luffy's is heart. What does stomach mean? I don't know the stomach part. That sounds interesting, but I don't know what it means. Henchme976 is only 5 at a time, though. Yeah, but I figure that Emu probably disposes of them, when, like, at given intervals. I have a feeling that it's very possible that even if Garling, even if Saturn didn't betray Emu very possibly would have removed one of the Gorsay to make room for Garling at some point in the story. Because otherwise you're passing up fucking Garling for, bums like Jupiter and Saturn to stay in the long term. Characters that can't even... that I don't even know what their level is. I don't think they're Admiral. Well, at the very least, Saturn's definitely not Admiral level. I don't think Jupiter is either. They might be like the bottom level of Admiral. Like maybe Saturn versus Greenbull. Who knows how that goes. Meek, thanks for the 5. My personal ranking as of 1161 is probably like Rocks, Garp, Roger, Whitebeard, Garling. That seems to be very common of an order. Rayleigh, Gaban, Shiki, Big Mom, Kyo, etc. Rest are irrelevant. I'm moving Kaido up several spots. I think Kaido's up there. I just think portrayal-wise, Oda's making a big deal of like, I don't think it's random. Like, it's not just like, oh, these happen to be the future Yonko, like Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard, so I'm just going to show them in groupings together. A lot of it's also portrayal, just like the manner in which they're visually framed, kind of the the aura Oda is giving them over the rest of the Rocks pirates. And it's consistent because Shiki gets thrown in there too. Like, Shiki gets grouped in there as well, and Shiki is the character that also should have become a Yonko after this, right? So it doesn't feel random. It feels like the characters that already... To me, it kind of makes sense because, like, post God Valley, those 4 characters then go on to become, like, the bigwigs of the New World, right? So, like, they should already be kind of at that level, like, where they're almost ready to start pushing towards, like, they should already be kind of close, you know, which already puts them further ahead of the rest of the Rocks Pirates. I'm not saying Kaido's, like, almost prime level or anything, obviously not. I'm just saying that, like, ahead of the what do you call, rest of the Rocks Pirates. Elijah Petty, thanks for the 2. I think chapter 1161 confirms Shiki had Yonko potential. I mean, it confirms it, I guess, in that Oda's officially framing it like that. But he's actually always done this. So if you take a look at... Here, let me show you guys. So if you take a look... Here. That Shiki is one of the... Like, Shiki is also a Yonko level character. And it just makes sense. Like, all associated material... Like, I think the only reason people underestimate Shiki is because he went out earlier. All material that we've been shown throughout the story establishes Shiki as definitely having been at least, like, yeah, like, Emperor level. Because Chapter 0 establishes Shiki had the strongest fleet in the world back during, like, Roger and Whitebeard's heyday. And that Shiki would have... the Shiki pirates, Golden Lion pirates, would have defeated the Roger pirates. It's literally expressed canonically, if not for them being saved, like the Roger pirates in their prime were saved by a storm, right? Obviously, Shiki had the bigger fleet, but you don't beat a stronger group of characters with just a bigger fleet, unless the captain also is, like, very, very strong, right? If Shiki was just, like, way below Roger, that wouldn't be a thing, right? And then on top of that, it's like the Ace novels established that the ocean was ruled by Roger, Whitebeard, and Shiki during the post-Rocks era, right? So, like, even before Kaido and Big Mom, Shiki was, like, a bigger deal. And even if you just look at, like, the framing of things throughout the Rocks flashback, it does seem like Whitebeard and Shiki are kind of like Rocks' first and second right and left hand strongest wings or whatever. That's kind of been the portrayal so far. So pretty much all, and then finally the only way Shiki was finally defeated in the story was Prime Garp and Prime Sengoku together, and we now know how strong fucking Prime Garp is. Like, and Prime Garp was taking Shiki seriously. Like, we've seen how strong Prime Garp is. So, and he and Sengoku, it's not like, I'm sure Garp could have beaten Shiki 1v1. I'm not saying that, but it's just like, it's not like Garp was talking down to Shiki or something like that. Like the way he's talking down to Big Mom here. Like, all context clues forever have indicated that Shiki essentially was an Emperor caliber pirate who just went down earlier than the start of the Great Age of Pirates because of his own undoing, right? Shiki could have chosen to like continue building his empire, in which case, like, once Roger was captured and sentenced for execution, he could have just chose to continue building his empire the way that like Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom did. And Shiki had the biggest empire already. His empire was bigger than all three of theirs at that point in time, right? But Shiki was so pissed, he didn't want scraps. He wasn't like, I'm not gonna contend with these other guys, like, I want the Pirate King himself. He went to fucking Marineford himself because he was pissed. And he basically destroyed his whole career because he just was like so upset about Roger being captured that he fucking kamikazed his own career. He fought the two strongest Marines in the world in their prime at the same time, and he obviously lost. So, yeah, with Shiki, it's like, it's not weird to think that he'd be Emperor level. It's like, no, Oda set things up that there were 4 characters that came out of the Rocks Pirates that were all Emperor level, and then the way that the lore goes, one of them went down earlier than the others because of his own undoing, and so there were 3 Emperors to start the Great Pirate Era, and then Shanks came along to fill kind of, to become a 4th Emperor. There's also the possibility Loki became an Emperor for some period of time. Alright, continuing on. Oh wait, are we caught up? Wait, you guys couldn't hear? Do I need to explain everything again? You were muted when changed screen? Fuck. Do I need to explain things again? Did you guys get what I was saying through context clues? Do you guys understand what I was saying through context clues? Who understood what I was saying? No. All right, that means I gotta show you guys again. All right, hold on. Okay, I think I did it. It should work now. Okay. All right, here we go. All right, take a look. So, in general, all context clues have always indicated that Shiki is supposed to be Yonko level 2, like considered alongside the other Yonko. Because every time Oda showed the Rocks Pirates, before we got to the Rocks flashback, every time he showed the Rocks Pirates, the characters that were always highlighted were Whitebeard, Big Mom, Kaido, Shiki, right? Same thing here. And all the little previews that we got of the Rocks Pirates. Visually, at least, those were the characters that were highlighted. Same thing where we get news that the remnants of the legendary Rocks Pirates began to split up and gather new comrades. So again, it's Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, Shiki. Oda's always portrayed Shiki alongside the other emperors. All that happened is that Shiki, because Shiki had the biggest fleet in the world post Rocks. The Prime Golden Lion Pirates canonically would have defeated the Prime Roger Pirates if not for the storm. The Ace novel explains that Shiki, Roger, and Whitebeard were the 3 strongest pirates post-Rocks era. So Shiki only went down because he tried to fight Garp and Sengoku at the same time because he was so upset that Roger was captured. So Shiki was always Emperor level. Like, he's always been portrayed the same as, like, Kaido, Big Mom, and Whitebeard. It's just, literally, he threw away his empire a little bit early. And he was actually ahead of he had the first real pirate empire out of all of the groups that we've seen. So Shiki was really the first emperor in a sense, because Whitebeard's crew, we saw, took some time to create. Kaido and Big Mom, there were still works in progress. Shiki had the biggest fleet in the world, so he was the first emperor. He just threw his empire away before the Great Age of Pirates started. And so then Whitebeard, Kaido, and Big Mom became the first technical emperors, but Shiki was the first, first pirate with an empire, basically. Let me swap out of this. And really, I want to... Hold on. So if I do this, let me add a display capture. This is supposed to get my other screen. Did it do it? No. The fuck? It should be able to capture my... No. This is not correct. Okay. We'll just have to deal with it for the moment. You guys don't even know what I'm talking about. Anyway. Yeah, we'll get to this in a second. Elijah Petty, thanks for the 2. I think chapter 1161. No, we covered that. Paul, thanks for the 2. If Laughdale's in the sky, Shiki may return. Yeah, maybe. Grizzly Adams, thanks for the 5. Do you think Ace, the sword, will come into play in the story? Seems like an important weapon to be lost to the ether. Perhaps S-Hawk wields it for a buff. No, I don't think that that's a big deal. I don't think that's a big deal. Tonga Tapu says, what do you call? Wait, am I muted again? I don't know. Yeah, what does it say about Silver Axe being Shiki's rival? I think that Silver Axe, I believe at this point Silver Axe is probably weaker than Kaido. I think just pure portrayal-wise. It seems like Silver Axe is not as strong as Kaido. So Silver Axe could be Shiki's rival, but, you know, Law and Kid are, Kid is technically Luffy's rival, and, there's a crazy big gap between those two. Hell, I mean, technically all of the fucking supernovas were Luffy's rivals, and they all fucking sucked. So just keep that in mind. Technically Cavendish was a rival, you know? Marco Saint, thanks a lot. I think Jupiter replaced an older Gorsay sometime before the God Valley incident. In the chapter that we see Shaki show up in Hachinosu, they show a silhouette that doesn't match Jupiter, whereas the other 4 are. So, that's interesting, because people did mention that, but I don't know if that's confirmed. What chapter did people see this? What chapter was this? Because I'm down to take a look. They show a silhouette that doesn't match Jupiter. I mean, I would love to see, because I personally subscribe to the theory, I think that Jupiter is going to be a traitor. I think he's going to betray the Gorsay and Emu. So I'm down for anything that suggests Jupiter's a little bit different. And his family, the Shepherd family, is also turning out to be pretty important for some reasons. So, yeah, I'm curious. MOH, thanks for the 5. Harold meets Shanks in Marijua. We could see Shanks' life in the Holy Land. Seeing Shanks interact with Garling and Shamrock will be interesting. Yeah, so there's definitely still interesting stuff to come from this whole flashback. Jumbo Dumbo, thanks for the 5. Kaido kills one of the Gorsay to test his Delph Fruit, causing Jupiter to get promoted as a new Gorsay since he's the youngest. That would be insane. I don't think Kaido is so strong right now that he could kill a Gorsay. Because, again, Kaido's 21 right now. I don't think he's strong enough to kill a Gorsay just yet. Because, keep this in mind. Luffy can't even kill a Gorsay right now. Luffy doesn't know how, you know? So I think Kaido killing a Gorsay, I think that's a long shot, you know? I wouldn't be surprised if a character kills a Gorsay to demonstrate their strength here. Grizzly Adams, thanks for the 5. If elders get summoned, could that be an opportunity to show how they stack up to the old legends? That would provide better context for modern fights. 100%, and that's really why I do hope that they show up. Because, so one thing with One Piece is that, like, it's hard to scale characters from the different eras, especially because Oda is very hesitant to show characters in their primes, right? So, like, how do we even scale, like, Big Mom right now to Big Mom from God Valley, right? Like, same question with Kaido. Even Whitebeard, it's like, okay, we know he's not as strong at God Valley as he was at his prime, but, like, how big is the gap? All of those sort of questions, right? He's clashing with Roger, doesn't want to face Garp. There's questions, right? I think seeing them against the Gorsay is perfect because the Gorsay are immortal characters that are static, right? You can understand that they're immortal. They're not really getting stronger or weaker as far as we can tell. So we get a good idea through them. I think Garling will also be a good metric because I assume once Garling becomes a Gorsay, he no longer has his, if he has old age disadvantages, then they go away. So Garling will be a good barometer as well. Yeah. I mean, it's not even established if the Gorsay if the God's Knights experience age the same way characters do. Because people talk about, like, look, Rayleigh destroyed Somers. Look at what Rayleigh did to Somers compared to, like, Gabon versus Somers. Obviously, Gabon got a lot older. But then I'm also curious, is Somers weaker now than he was at God Valley? Like, does Somers experience aging? Because he obviously gets older, but does he only get, like, because of the God's Knight's regeneration, is the age mostly a cosmetic thing? Or does he also experience, like, fatigue, arthritis, things like that? So hopefully something establishes that. And then, yeah, it would be cool to see the Gorsay introduced right there and then see how the Gorsay stack up versus, like, against the old legends versus how they did, like, it'd be really cool to see someone damage Warkiri when Luffy couldn't damage Warkiri, stuff like that, Rayleigh versus Venus Juro or some shit. The Lowman, thanks for the 5. It seemed like Dory and Brogy were asking a rhetorical question when talking about it, Shanks, and Joy Boy. A rhetorical question? Oh, as in they're saying, like, well, wasn't their question literally, I actually had to use this panel for today's video. So I looked up Sandman's interpretation. So they were trying to figure out, was it stronger than, here, I actually even have the panel right now. Literally just had it for today's video. Let's see. Where do we have this? Where is this? Man, this is hard to find. Yeah, this is what I'm seeing. I didn't feel any hostility. Was that hockey better than Shanks's? And he says it is ambiguous from his speech as to who is better / greater hockey user between Joy Boy and Shanks. So what's I don't know. I mean, that's Sandman's interpretation. I tend to trust Sandman's translations. So to me, that's basically, I don't think it's more complicated than that. That doesn't mean Shanks has stronger hockey than Joy Boy's, but it does mean that it's ambiguous as to whose is greater. Marco Saint, thanks a lot. Jupiter was already a Gorsay during God Valley, so Kaido couldn't have killed any Gorsay post Devil Fruit. Jupiter was already a Gorsay during... Wait, do we definitely see Jupiter as a Gorsay during God Valley? Did we miss it? The Lowman says, I just can't see anyone being on Joy Boy's tier besides Emu. I mean, I don't think Emu's on Joy Boy's tier from his reaction. My whole thing with Emu is that, like, I imagine Emu has really strong hockey, but I think it's more so the broken Devil Fruit that makes him near, like, near unbeatable. Kind of like an NL situation. But I I mean, I think when Joy Boy Hockey's not when Joy Boy's Hockey Not was released, I think most of us were like, okay, that's clearly hockey that's beyond any character, right? It literally took out all 5 Gorsay. But again, Oda then expands our understanding of what we are supposed to think is possible, and then literally the next chapter he's like, well, actually it's uncertain whether or not that's better than Shanks's or not. So you can we have to wait and see what that means, but that's the author basically telling us right now that if you thought that's crazy, there are in fact characters alive who can have comparable hockey. My view of it is basically like Joy Boy is just the thing that makes Joy Boy stronger than any other character is that he does have like the highest ceiling you can have of hockey, right? Plus the devil fruit, the Nika fruit, right? Those two things together put him way beyond other characters. But I think other characters can be equal to him in individual categories. So I think there's characters that have a devil fruit as strong as the Nika fruit. For example, I think Emu's fruit is probably as strong, maybe stronger than the Nika fruit. Maybe this legendary Elbaf fruit is as strong, the Yami Yami no Mi, right? So I think fruit-wise, it's not like Joy Boy's fruit is the undisputed best fruit. And then hockey-wise, he probably is at the very, very tippy-top ceiling of hockey, but I imagine like Prime Roger is also there, right? Maybe Prime Garp, maybe Shanks. Like, at least that's what's implied in the manga. So I don't think Joy Boy is just like number one in both, like undisputed number one in both categories. I think he's like ceiling you can have in terms of hockey, and then ceiling you can have in terms of devil fruit. But there's characters that are comparable to him in either individual category. The boy who cried, Super Saiyan, thanks for the 2. Will we learn who the previous strongest was soon? My bad, strongest swordsman, says my boy who cried, Super Saiyan. If Harold and Rox ever finish their duel, then yeah. Meek, thanks for the 5. Did you already record tomorrow's podcast? Yes, I recorded it just before I did the stream. Also random, but I think Crocodile and Dofi are this generation's Shiki and Kyo. Thoughts? I don't think either of them are anywhere close to strong enough to being Shiki and Kyo. I think just two characters having a rivalry doesn't make them, like, parallels of other characters automatically. Like, Lucci and fucking Jabura have a rivalry, you know? Andrew Rhodes says, the Elba fruit is the Goma Goma no Mi. So, yeah, that's also very, very possible. I mean, to be honest, all signs are already pointing to the Elba fruit being the Goma Goma no Mi. I am curious what the second fruit Rox is talking about is, so at least there's probably one other fruit that's comparable. Maybe it's the Yami Yami no Mi. I don't know. And then we've got Emu's fruit, right? Whitebeard's fruit is obviously a really big deal. But my one thing with the Elba fruit that really fucking throws me is I just don't get why Rox thought that Harold would be the perfect one to eat it. That just doesn't make sense to me. Why does he think Harold would be the... Unless Rox... So let's say the Elbaf fruit is the Nika fruit. Maybe Rox thinks of... Because, you know, there's different interpretations of Nika. So maybe Rox thinks of Nika as that destroyer god, right? That, like, some giants believe Nika is, right? But then other giants believe that Nika's like sillier or more freedom based or whatever, right? So maybe Rox just knows the lore of Nika. Maybe he's heard the other version where it's like, Nika's like this destroyer warrior who puts an end all. So maybe Rox thinks that, okay, Harold is perfect for eating that fruit. Just look at how powerful Harold is. Really powerful, mighty warrior. It just makes sense. That would be my one explanation. Because otherwise, if Rox understands what the Nika fruit actually, the abilities it actually gives you, Harold is like one of the worst picks for that. Harold will obviously still be really strong because he's Harold, but like, it doesn't fit personality-wise, like anything, right? Like, I think Rox himself might be a better fit for that than Harold. Okay, the Lowman, thanks to the 5. Lawn Kid did have some feats on Big Mom. I wouldn't say that they're way fodder to Luffy. They had some feats on Big Mom. I guess not literally fodder, but like Law and Kid's performance against Big Mom is so overrated I can't even begin to describe. Because, like, if the metric is had some feats against Big Mom, well, Jinbei and Robin have feats against Big Mom. Pretty good ones, too. So, like, and they're fodder to Luffy. Jinbei and Robin are, without a doubt in my mind, closer to Kid and Law's level than Law and Kid are individually to Luffy. Without a shadow of a doubt in my mind. Like, there's no question in my mind that they are closer to that level than they are to Luffy. There's a big gap there. I think base Luffy without gears fucks up Kid and Law. Like, no, actually, that's not even a questionable thing. Base Luffy without gears definitely fucks up Kid and Law. Like, no question. Because base Luffy was fucking boxing with Kaido for God knows how long. Whereas Kid and Law individually, they couldn't last more than like 10 seconds against Big Mom one at a time. They had to keep swapping back and forth. Like, base Luffy's solo performance against Kaido, I think, is more impressive than Kid and Law's duo performance against Big Mom. Because they only beat Big Mom because of TNT. Like, that's genuinely the only reason. She was fine outside of that, right? That's what caused her eyes to go white, yada yada, right? Base Luffy just actually, like, Kid and Law together against Big Mom, they had about one chapter where they're actually giving her a run for her money, right? And then the TNT takes over. Base Luffy against Kaido, he was boxing with Kaido for like 40 chapters. And then he started using like gear 4th and then finally gear 5th and everything like that. Like, I legitimately think that's, like, if you just look at how both of those fights played out, any, like, fraction of a second that Kid and Law had to fight Big Mom 1v1, they were immediately getting demolished. Like, or having to run away or dodge and everything like that. Luffy was fighting Kaido in base form, just straight up 1v1. Obviously, he's not going to beat Kaido, but he was holding his own pretty damn good. You know? Kaido even says, like, this is the most anybody's, like, this is the best anybody's done against me in, like, God knows how long, you know? Tesseract says he used gear 2 and gear 3. Fine, he mixed it in a tiny bit. Like, are you really saying, like, gear, like, post time skip, gear 2, gear 3 is essentially base Luffy. He'll mix it in for attacks, right? Like, it's a minute difference. People usually scale, like, people don't even, like, post time skip, let's all be honest. We all know, like, post time skip, people generally don't even scale, like, gear 2, gear 3 Luffy. Like, people aren't really like, okay, this is base Luffy, then this is gear 2, then this is gear 3, and then this is gear 4. Post time skip, generally it was like, okay, Luffy's like this level, this tier, and then gear 4 Luffy's this tier. And then finally we got the new additions like gear 5th and everything. But like, let's just be like, you can look through all post time skip power scaling threads, etc. People had a tier that they put base Luffy, which also included gear 2 and 3, and then gear 4 Luffy, they tended to put a different tier, right? It was like, well, normal Luffy is about here, but then in gear 4 he can be here, and then the issue is gear 4 has a time limit. That's generally how he was discussed, right? Even if you set that aside, even if you want to be like very, very, very specific and say, no, base Luffy means no gear 2, no gear 3, fine. Go look at the start of Luffy versus Kaido in chapter 1010. Like, Luffy is literally fighting blow for blow with Kaido for a solid period of time, just without any gears even, right? That is better than Kid and Law can do, without a doubt. Kid and Law cannot do that 1v1 against Big Mom. Anything Luffy showed in 1010 is already above what Kid and Law can do at any other point in the story that they've shown. Luffy fucking came back and split the sky with Kaido base 4, as far as I remember. Like, there are panels you can find of him using gear 2 and 3, but most of it is just him boxing straight hands with Kaido. That's above Kid and Law. So, like, if base Luffy is, like, my view is base Luffy, let's say gear 2 and 3 involved as well, whatever, here. Then below that is Kid and Law together. Kid and Law together would still lose to that version of Luffy. Just look at how Luffy was doing versus Kaido compared to them versus Big Mom, okay? Then you got gear 4 Luffy, and then you got gear 5 Luffy. So there's just like, if you want to compare to Kid and Law individually, it's just like, they are legitimately closer to Jinbei's level than they are to Luffy. Jeremy's Rambo, thanks for the 5. What do you think Oda didn't? Why do you think Oda didn't have any of the CP9 agents join Cross Guild? Like, imagine how cool it would have been if Bluno or Khalifa was under them. Because it doesn't fit their character motivations. Cross Guild is composed of pirates who now have a common goal in that they're hunted by the world government. It's not just like random like villains from the past being thrown in there. It's pirates who are now under fire from the world government and are basically like fighting back now, and like they're putting bounties on the world government, etc. And now, their goal has become to create like their own ideal nation or whatever, where they can be independent. It's a pirate-run organization for pirates, you know. And now they're going after the One Piece too, although One Piece will likely fuel their goals of trying to create their ideal nation. But yeah, just random other villains don't fit. I think even Doflamingo, if you freed him, wouldn't fit in there because, one, Doflamingo views them as like lesser blood than him, but he would probably ally. He's allied with humans, obviously, in the past and did business dealings. But Doflamingo's goals, I don't think Doflamingo's goal. I just don't know, because Doflamingo likes to be in charge. That's the thing. Like, he wants to be king of his own nation. I don't know if he'd work with Crocodile well. I don't know. It's complicated. Isaac St. Charles, thanks a lot. Your opinion on what will happen to Blackbeard end of story change after knowing that Rox is actually a good guy? Maybe Aokiji sincerely joins him after knowing it. I don't think Blackbeard's going to turn out. I think Blackbeard's done too much bad for him to turn out to be a good guy. I think the tragedy of Rox and Blackbeard's story is that while Rox turned out to be a good guy, or at least not evil like the way people claimed he was, and while he likely goes out essentially sacrificing himself in this sort of suicide mission to try and save his wife and child, despite him going out as a sort of tragic hero, the sad part is that in doing so, his son grows up, like he saves his son, but his son now grows up in a manner that Rox would never approve of, right? And so Blackbeard becomes essentially the evil that everyone believed Rox was, which is poetic, but in a sad way. The Lowman, thanks for the 10. Difference is Law and Kid fought a Big Mom going all out, unlike Brook and Robin, and they broke her bones, which is significant damage, and are able to tag her, so they are definitely relative. I mean, you made the argument, look, if you want to make the argument that, Kid and Law... The fact that you're having to explain why Kid and Law's performance is better than Brook and Robin or Jinbei and Robin says enough in itself, you know? It's like, you're right, Kid and Law did do better against, Big Mom in a more serious fight than Jinbei and Robin. But that doesn't change my overall point, which is that Kid and Law are still way closer in terms of feats, than they are to Jinbei and Robin, than they are to base Luffy, right? Because Kid and Law's feats essentially boil down to, like, when working together, and that is the big caveat, when working together, right? Because no evidence of them doing well 1v1, when working together using team attacks that play off one another, they are able to damage Big Mom, who is serious, right? Jinbei and Robin demonstrated that they can, using team attacks, somewhat get the drop on a Big Mom who is obviously not trying, right? Kid and Law, the most they demonstrate is that when going all out using team attacks reliant on a partner, they are able to deal damage to Big Mom, right? That's what was established. Base Luffy, by himself, without any assistance needed, is able to go near toe-to-toe with Kaido. By himself. Split the sky, do everything, right? So that's like, and that's base Luffy, right? So the gap between like all-out gear 5th Luffy versus individual Kid and Law is just like absurd. It's like, it can't be described. Declan Murphy, thanks for the 2. Does that scale Blackbeard below base Luffy? I think Blackbeard does not scale that high right now. Blackbeard, and I've been consistent on that, because Blackbeard turned away from fucking 80-year-old Rayleigh. like Blackbeard doesn't have significant feats at the moment. Blackbeard's best feat is defeating Marco. That was his claim to fame, by the way. It was after he defeated Marco that he started being known as he started being given the argument for Emperor. So Blackbeard, like, I think people try to use Blackbeard as a gotcha because Blackbeard's a Yonko, but Blackbeard so far is not established to be a Yonko in the way that the OG Yonko were. The OG Yonko were, like, when we talk about Yonko level, we're talking about, like, generally as a community, we're referring to OG Yonko as in, like, the Sky Splitters, right? That's when you know, like, Yonko level characters are clashing, right? Kaido Big Mom split the sky. Luffy Kaido split the sky. Whitebeard Shanks split the sky, right? That's kind of what Yonko level looks like, and it's symbolized very clearly in the story. Blackbeard, we know his situation, right? We've already seen Blackbeard's crew. His commanders are not that good, right? We kind of saw, like, Shiryu not exactly the same as, like, other first mates, right? He's no King, Ben Beckman, Katakuri, or whatever. Blackbeard doesn't really have strong... Like, his whole crew's a work in progress, including he himself. So whatever level Blackbeard is supposed to be at the end of the story, we don't know how far off he is from that. So Blackbeard can't really be used for scaling at the moment because the most we know is he beat Marco, so he's above Marco's level. He himself doesn't feel confident that he can beat old Rayleigh, right? So base Luffy versus Blackbeard, I don't know how that goes necessarily, but it's not crazy to say that, yeah, just through sheer hockey, like Luffy has Conqueror's Haki, right? Advanced Conqueror's Haki coding. Blackbeard hasn't shown that. Blackbeard is sweating from a fucking Seraphim. We don't know how far Blackbeard is off from his final level, but nothing he's shown gives us much to go off of to suggest that, like, Blackbeard is definitively on the same tier as, like, Kaido, Shanks, Marineford, Whitebeard, stuff like that. Bashor Yusuf says, you have good narrative takes, but your power scaling takes are trash. I think I just call it like I see it. And I believe that one of the things that separates me from a lot of people when it comes to power scaling is I'm willing to change my opinion over time. I'm always willing to change my opinion based on evidence. I think a lot of people like Blackbeard, and they like that Blackbeard's supposed to be the final villain, so they scale Blackbeard higher than he has been shown to be in the story. I just go based off what we've seen. That's it. Simple examples are like, if you go through my power scaling lists, you can see when I've moved characters up and down based on new things that happen. I also will point out that characters that I hate, despite me hating them, that actually does not play into my power scaling takes. And the simplest evidence of that is Yamato. Anybody who follows this channel, like, people think that I underrate Kid in Law because I'm biased against them. No. I underrate Kid in Law by people's standards because people overrate the hell out of Kid in Law. I dislike Law, yes, but that does not play into my power scaling takes of him. Because there are characters I dislike more than Law, like fucking Yamato, my least favorite character in the story. By far. Like, by far. And with Yamato, I'm willing to say that Yamato, everything Yamato is, you cannot detract from Yamato's strength. Because everything Yamato has done in the story, it scales her to at least first mate level, definitely above fucking Law and Kid, right? And I don't fucking like Yamato. You could argue it scales her above Zoro, definitely scales her above Sabo. Like, I think you could put Yamato at the top of first mate level. Or, like, the level right below Admiral. Like, Yamato might be the closest you can get to Admiral level without being Admiral level. And I fucking hate Yamato. I still put Zoro above her, but that's because I think Zoro did a bit more with the Kaido stuff. Now that we know Zoro can't control his Conqueror's Haki, maybe Yamato's above. But that's all I'll say. Like, I think most people have extreme bias when it comes to their power scaling takes. Most people are very rigid in that they don't want to change it. You can look at my lists over time. I change things based on events that happen in the manga, even if I feel strongly about one thing beforehand versus after. And I will rate my favorite characters lower. I will rate characters I dislike higher. It's just, that's the one thing I'll say. I think people can sometimes dislike my power scaling takes because I don't just ride certain characters' dicks like a lot of people do. Mossy05, thanks for the 5. People forget most of the attacks Law and Kid landed on Big Mom were while she was off guard. Also, she was falling, she was still able to fight. Also, she was falling, she was still able to fight. Yeah, exactly. I'm just calling it like I see it, which is like, if you swap out if it's just blank characters, right? So ignore the characters' names. If I saw character A and B completely unable to fight Big Mom, 1v1 for any period of time, and then I see character C basically going toe-to-toe with Kaido for an extended period of time, even in base form, I'd just be like, yeah, character C is stronger than A and B. You don't have to think that much. It's just very apparent in the narrative. It's like, okay, these two, A and B together, can do well against Big Mom. They can hold their own, but not individually. Whereas character C, by himself, can do very well against this other character, Kaido. Right? It's very simple. Once you take the names out of it, then power scaling becomes very simple, because then your bias is gone. You know? But I think people want Law to be a certain level of strength, so they'll like clutch their pearls and be like, Law? Below base Luffy? It's like, yeah, just read how the fight went. Jaren's Rambo, thanks for the 2. Just admit Kid and Law are characters that you hate. I liked Kid a lot initially, but now I dislike him. But I dislike him largely because he didn't do jack shit. It's not like I was rooting against Kid for that fight. I was rooting for Kid to do shit throughout that fight, but he didn't. That's the problem. So, if anything, I actually had pro-Kid bias going into the Big Mom fight, because I was like, I want to see Kid be good. I want to see Kid do something. I'm really looking forward to Kid. You can look at my earlier takes on Kid much, much, much earlier, before the whole Big Mom fight, but I was very pro-Kid throughout that fight. By the end of it, there's just no defense. I can't look at Kid's performance against Big Mom and be like, yeah, that's as good as base Luffy right now against Kaido, because it's just blatantly not. It's clear that Luffy's operating on a much higher level than Kid was. Law, I did dislike, but at the same time, there are clear characters that I strongly fucking dislike way more than Law, like fucking Yamato, who I give props to based on what she did. You cannot deny Yamato fighting Kaido the way that she did for that period of time. Whereas I look at Law and I'm like, he's not doing anything by himself. If there was a panel of Law doing something to Big Mom by himself, where she's not distracted by Kid, like 1v1, then I change my tune. But it's not there. It's one thing where, like, I dislike the character, so I'm making up reasons to dislike them. But this is a situation where, like, it can be any fucking character. It could be a blank character. Like, character, again, just call it character A, right? I don't know who it is. Does character A do anything to Big Mom by himself? No. Is it always sneak attacks when Big Mom is distracted? Yes. That's done. Like, I can remove all bias from myself from the character and just be like, well, that's actually what's happening. That's it. I think other people can't do that. I genuinely believe that. Because, like, if you just list out what happens, it'd be insane to say that, like, Law did better against Big Mom than base Luffy did against Kaido. It just makes no sense. Because he doesn't do anything against Big Mom by himself. And again, as much as I hated Law, right? So if you want to say that, Morge, you must have had bias because you hate Law. I was really fucking rooting for Kid in that fight. I really wanted him to come out looking good. I was really fucking rooting for the dude. So I had tremendous pro-Kid bias going into that fight. Fight ends, I'm just like, neither of these characters did anything solo against Big Mom, really. Kid had one exchange that kind of made him look good against Big Mom by himself. But Law didn't. Anyway. Continuing on. Grizzly Adams points out, without TNT, Big Mom flies back up and kills them. Exactly, that's why Oda wrote in the TNT. You gotta remember, like, the author writes decisions in for a reason. There's no reason to write the TNT going off if it's not necessary for the Big Mom fight for her to lose. So you think Oda just randomly was like, and I'll have Big Mom conscious, but then randomly I'll also write in like 10,000 tons of TNT going off in her face, and then she's knocked out after that? But I just chose to put this in randomly. It's irrelevant to the fight. Kid and Law already beat her before that. Then why the fuck was she conscious before the TNT, and why'd you require the TNT to knock her out? You realize that Oda wrote in that scene for a reason, right? The TNT was already frozen. Like, Yamato fucking stopped that shit, by the way, right? So that plot point is resolved. Oda still included that as a component. Literally the final blow of the Big Mom fight is the TNT. So it's just like, this isn't like a real world event happening, right? This is something an author is putting to page, so he's making decisions of what he feels is necessary to include for this fight to reach a logical conclusion, right? It's not like a real world event where it's like, yeah, Law and Kid, these two real people fought this character Big Mom, and they beat her, and there were some random bombs that went off at the end, but that's random. That's like just a thing that happened at the end of the fight, coincidental. It's not coincidental because the author wrote it in because the author felt it was necessary to include. Does that make sense? All right. Drellday20, thanks for the 2. This discussion about Kid and Law is Kizaru upscale. Yeah. Oh, Kid and Law are not lasting 5 seconds against Kizaru. Blaze, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 30 months. Blackbeard is post Whole Cake Island Luffy level. I think Blackbeard's above that. Because I think Kid and Law are above post Whole Cake Island Luffy level, personally. The Lowman, thanks for the 5. Tagging full power Big Mom and breaking her bones greater than fighting Kaido, who isn't using Future Sight and holding back. What? Tagging full power Big Mom and breaking her bones is greater than fighting Kaido. Okay, so there's a key word that you're missing in there, which is 1v1. 1v1. I don't know how you're missing this point. Kid and Law, they didn't... So, do you have panels of them tagging full power Big Mom one-on-one? Right? It's not comparable when it's 2-on-1 and they're trading, attacking while the other person distracts her. Right? That's not comparable. And you can say Kaido, who isn't using Future Sight, Big Mom's not fucking using Future Sight. You think Big Mom's using Future Sight? And Kaido's holding back. Kaido, at the end of the fight, before Kaido went into his all-out mode and everything, he already confirmed that Luffy had pushed him further than anybody else had. In God knows how long. And you know how Kaido was just fighting? Literally 2 days ago? Fucking Big Mom herself. Do you understand how insane? You're talking about a 2v1. The Lowman. 1-on-1. How does Kid and Law versus Big Mom go? Look at the panels of when they try to fight her 1-on-1 without attacking with sneak attacks. Look at that. You need to look at that, because that's the only way you can compare to Luffy, who's fighting Kaido 1-on-1 for a way longer period of time. What the fuck? Elijah Petty, thanks for the 5. If Maffy killed Dragon, Garp would have done nothing, just like with Ace. A genocide unfolds before his eyes, yet his moral compass stays silent. No. Dragon would 100% have saved, would 100% have saved his son. Because the Ace situation, I think people are just like, Garp fucking hated Ace. The Ace situation was about way more than Ace. The Ace situation was about the war with Whitebeard. Because Garp had to be on the... If the Whitebeard pirates won at Marineford, then it's very, very, very clearly established in like a million different ways. Like, it's stated over and over. All of society collapses if the Marines are defeated by pirates at Marineford, right? It's not even about, at that point, Garp feeling like Ace should die or shouldn't die, right? Garp literally tells Ace, it's too late, we've angered the King of the Seas, right? That's before Marineford starts. That's what it's really become. It's become about, can the Marines withstand basically the strongest pirate crew on Earth, the purported strongest pirate crew on Earth, declaring war on them, right? It becomes a battle that's about so much more than Ace. Garp is fighting at that point in time, for the Marines' existence, basically. Like, Sengoku even gives the full speech to Blackbeard at the end, like, this whole thing is bigger than you. Like, you trying to sink Marineford, etc. The people of this world rely on the Marines. Like, they rely on the Marines to keep to keep them safe at night. If we fall, the whole world falls into chaos, right? Hannibal explains this at the beginning too, right? Once Ace is captured, right, it stops being about, like, does Garp love his grandson or whatever. It's basically now, war is coming. This was an act of war. And now Garp has to be on the side that is the Marines, because that's what prevents the world from falling into chaos. And that's very clearly established, that the world will fall into chaos if the Marines fall. Like him or hate him, the way that the system is currently constructed, the world falls into chaos if the Marine force collapses here. That's just a fact. That's established so painfully clearly over and over in One Piece, so that people who don't understand nuance can hopefully get a little iota of it into their heads, okay? Now, with Dragon, Dragon's just Garp's fucking son. He's also part of the Marines right now, which means that Dragon's a fucking Marine. That's his son. Garp is not gonna fucking let a Celestial Dragon just kill his son. Literally fucking, like, it's literally established. Garp does not agree with the morals of the Celestial Dragons, which is why he refuses to work for them. Garp is not the servant of the Celestial Dragons. There is no point in the story that Garp acts as a servant of the Celestial Dragons. Look, shouldn't it be a Marine's duty to protect Celestial Dragons? His personal moral compass spares no room for such duty. It's very clearly spelled out for us, right? Garp has never followed the whims of a Celestial Dragon. Even when God Valley is being attacked, Garp refuses to go. Who remembers this? Why is Garp at God Valley? Is it to protect the Celestial Dragons? No, he's at God Valley because he wants to fight Roger. It's a personal thing. He refused to go when he was ordered to go there to protect the Celestial Dragons. Garp has refused to go protect Celestial Dragons. He refuses. He doesn't have to. He's not under their, like, they can't do jack shit to him. It even says in that same speech by Sengoku, Celestial Dragons, they can't do anything about his insubordination because Garp's just too strong of a Marine. He's just too important to the Marine Force. All right. Iris says, Morgy missed my super chat because of the kid-in-law rage bait. Let me catch it. Where is it? Iro, thanks for the 5. I want to see the Gorsay use Advanced Conquerors Haki in God Valley because everyone commented on the Gorsay's godlike Haki, but yet they never use Advanced Haki, if any Haki. I feel like Venus Juro definitely has Advanced Conquerors Haki. I feel like Warcury, maybe Mars. Yeah, we just didn't get any displays. Their Haki has been hyped up, but it's complicated because it's just like Oda. Again, I will always feel like Oda introduced the Gorsay in, like, not the best manner. Because if you're introducing villains who need to be defeated later, then it's usually good to introduce them in a manner that feels effective, right? Because that creates the hype for later. But Oda, in Egghead, he wanted it to be kind of like a victory for the Strats. He wanted to feel like the world government tried to stop him, but the Strats just got away again, and it's like a victorious act of rebellion by the Strats, right? So he introduced the Gorsay, and, like, it seems so intimidating at first. They seem so scary. They do such cool shit right off the bat. Like, Mars destroys the dome, and Jinbei's talking about how crazy the Haki is. Venus Juro is taking out all the Pacifista in, like, 10 panels, like 3 panels. Warcury's releasing all this crazy Conquerors Haki. But then as it progresses, then it becomes kind of like, the Gorsay here, ha ha, he. It's not a big deal to us at the end of the day. Like, the Gorsay are never allowed to be effective against the Straw Hats themselves, is the tricky thing. Like, Mars will do a team attack and blow them away and everything. It doesn't hammer in a sense of, like weight to what the Gorsay's threat should represent. We get the idea that they're strong because it's like, well, it takes a full team attack to send Mars away. But at the same time, you never really see Mars getting the better. Like, you want to see the villains getting the better of the heroes to subconsciously establish a feeling of, like, oh shit, these guys are strong, you know? Like, one of the things that Oda did with the Admirals that was so phenomenal pre-timeskip was, like, every time an Admiral showed up in One Piece, the Strats just got fucked up. Like, they just got fucking team wiped, right? Aokiji, team wipe. Kizaru, team wipe, right? Akainu, fucking brother wipe. Like, it's just, like, such an effective use of, like, establishing subconsciously what we're supposed to feel every time an Admiral shows up, right? Now, the Gorsay, these Gorsay could be just as strong as the Admirals, right? Some of them, maybe, right? Maybe even stronger. We don't know what each Gorsay is supposed to scale to. But in terms of feeling, it doesn't incite the same feeling because when the Gorsay are introduced, we see them being generally ineffective in their whole mission to capture all the Strats, right? And obviously it's because the Strats have gotten way stronger now. We get that. But you can still have the Strats feel like some level of pressure from the Gorsay, right? Like, yeah, the Strats have gotten stronger, but, like, you can show some of them losing here or there, right? Like, as far as we know, Zoro's probably not as strong as Venus Juro yet. You can have Zoro lose to Venus Juro, or at least not be doing too well against him, right? Obviously, Zoro's not allowed to lose another duel. Like, Luffy struggling to hit Warcury, right? Instead of having Luffy laugh about it, maybe have him actually, like, feel some level of pressure over it, right? I'm sure most of the Strats can't handle Mars. Have Mars fuck up some Strats or something, right? Like, the Strats can still get away. Like, I just think that the way Oda chose to introduce the Gorsay, and then all of that makes it much more exciting when the Joy Boy Hockey Knot saves them at the end. I'm not saying rewrite all of Egghead for just to serve the Gorsay, because I think Egghead's a really, really strong arc, and I think it evokes the emotions it's supposed to evoke. But I'm saying, with the Gorsay point in particular, maybe find a different point in the story to introduce them as a problem than if you don't want to introduce them in an arc where it's supposed to feel like the Straw Hats are just triumphant from start to finish. That's my only thought with the Gorsay. Anyway, but I've talked about this a lot before. Declan Murphy, thanks for the 5. I don't think I'm missing any of the supers. Let me know if I am. Considering Yamato strong doesn't mean you're unbiased with other characters. I agree with your takes this stream. BTW Sabo's the only huge disagreement. How do I say this? Obviously, nobody in the world can be absolutely unbiased. But I do feel like I notice a trend where it's like a character will be talking about like, oh my god, Morge, you don't have Sanji above like King, Katakuri, Marco, Yamato. You don't have above all of these characters. And then their name will be like Blackleg, Vinsmoke, Sanji. And it's like, well, I don't know. I'm sure you're speaking from a purely objective perspective. I just think that it is very, very common that I see that characters that happen to be very popular, like Sabo, like Law, are characters that people gas up in a way that seems inconsistent to a degree with what we are actually shown on screen. I think that's very, very common. And I think there's plenty of characters that are less popular that people will randomly underrate, for whatever. Like, fucking Lucci, I think, got the short end of the stick for a while. I think people underrate, like, fucking Inuarashi, Nekomamushi, I think there's a shit ton of, I think you can draw a clear correlation between, Greenbull. People don't like Greenbull, and people, will put, there are a lot of people who put Sabo above Greenbull right now. Why? Because Sabo's a really popular character, and Greenbull's not. Even though what was established that Greenbull and Fujitora, you literally just have to go by what the story establishes, right? I underrated Greenbull a lot as well, initially because of the Shanks stuff. But if you look at his full resume, right, like King, Queen, you could argue that they're handicapped. Capture Weevil, really good. He was handling most of the scabbards, which is really impressive. That's like Kaido type stuff. And then the big thing is that he tied with Fujitora, right? It wasn't like a fight to the death, but essentially Oda's telling us that Greenbull and Fujitora are relative to one another, right? I feel personally, based on what we've seen, if it went all the way Fujitora takes it, but at the same time, Greenbull should be close, if just about Fujitora's level. That's what we're told, which means that Sabo's not fucking beating him. Because Sabo is clearly in Dressrosa established to be well below Fujitora, right? If you want to argue that Sabo off-screen became way stronger, and I mean way stronger, then you could argue Sabo beats Greenbull. But that would be based off of nothing, right? Because it's not based off of anything that we've seen so far. There's just certain takes that you see that are you can gauge based off how popular a character is. Now, I can't claim that I'm unbiased, but I do think that if you go through my top 30, there's a lot of characters that I dislike that I still put higher than other people because I don't, I'm trying to view it based on just okay, if the story gives us new information, I will change my opinion on this or that. If the story gives us new information, I'll change this, yada, 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 right? Again, if you look at my top 30s, they do change over time pretty dramatically too, based on new information that we were given. I don't know. Whereas I personally think that a lot of people, if no matter what new evidence is given, they will find new ways to argue over and over that how do I put this? Let's say you had Aokiji over Garp before Hachinosu, right? I believe, I might be wrong, but I have to go check. I believe I had Aokiji over Garp before Hachinosu. I might be wrong, but I gotta go check, okay? And then if you get to the end of Hachinosu, and you're still just arguing in circles, despite Aokiji himself talking saying that, yeah, I couldn't have done it without a team effort, and you're still arguing that no, Aokiji is just above Garp because I just say he is. I just say he is. It doesn't matter what the manga shows me. I just say he is. Then at a certain point, it's just like, I think a lot of people, they already have a lot of their power scaling takes set in stone. And anything that happens in the manga, they're going to fight back hard against it and basically just ignore it because they want to keep what they feel originally is correct set. And that's just the way I feel like most people's agenda-based things go. Because it's like, if you've got an agenda, then that's what you're going to argue, regardless of what new information you get. Does that make sense? So I don't know. All right. It's just, I don't know. I think that a lot of, like... I think if people are like looking for any possible out to explain why the events and the statements of the manga don't fit with what they previously assumed, then we can say that, you know, maybe this is maybe there's some bias going on here. Cheritar, thanks for the 2. How'd you compare the raid to God Valley? The raid to God Valley? I don't know what that means. The raid to God Valley. It's two very different scenarios. Like, anything that involves the Strats is going to be, like, a much more involved battle where, like, you actually get full chapters devoted to 1v1s. God Valley, I think, might be more comparable to Marineford by the time we're all said and done with it, where, like, it's a larger scale battle, but with, like, not main characters, not our heroes, so it'll be more so skirmishes than anything. I'm more hyped for this than I was for the raid. The Lowman, thanks for the 2. Dude, one-on-one doesn't make them slower. Dude, I don't know if you're hearing yourself, man. I don't know if you're hearing yourself. It's just... So there's no difference if they're fighting one-on-one versus instead of 2v1. I like... The whole point is that, of course, it doesn't make them slower. The whole point is that because it's 2v1, you can land attacks that you otherwise would not be able to because speed is less of an issue because you don't actually have to tag the opponent by yourself because the opponent's distracted by something else. That's the whole point. Of course, the claim isn't that it makes them slower. The point is that at the speed that they're at, they would not be able... Speed that they're at and power of the attacks, they would not be able to damage Big Mom 1v1. They're only able to damage her 2v1 because they're able to hit her thanks to distractions. That's the whole point. That actually summarizes the argument very, very well, which is that, yeah, 1v1, they're not going to be slower. They're going to lack the distractions that allows them to land hits, though. That's the issue. Marco Saint, thanks a lot. Bro, don't get baited by the agenda piecers. Lol, 90% of them will disappear when Garp takes down a Celestial Dragon this flashback. I don't know if Garp will do that, but it'll be really cool to see. Okay, we're going to try and stay away from the... Okay, we're going to get into power scaling because obviously this is a power scaling stream, but we're going to try and cater it towards the God Valley incident in a second. So let's get there. Let me get through these and then we'll open that up. King G, thanks for the 2. The Gorsay's hockey is Emu's hockey. They have no will. I don't think that's the case because we saw... I thought that might have been the case initially, but then we learned like Garling is being turned into a Gorsay, right? So Garling's being turned into a Gorsay. I assume Garling retains his hockey. So it seems more like the Gorsay are just individually really strong characters throughout history that then got promoted to Gorsay status. So I don't think it's Emu's hockey personally. Mossio5, thanks for the 5. Law fans freeze when you ask them how many 1v1 wins he has that aren't fodder like Virgo. That's the crazy thing about Law, which is like... It's not even... Yeah. Hawkins. He beat Hawkins. Jaren's Rambo, thanks for the 2. But Croc ain't too popular and he is inconsistent. I think Crocodile is complicated because I think Crocodile has his fair share of fans. I think Crocodile is open season because we know that he likely got a... Or not we know. I think Crocodile's open season because, like, there's a huge disparity between how you see... Like, how to explain it? Some people think that Alabasta Crocodile and Marineford Crocodile are totally different levels of strength, whereas some people think it's the same, and it's just... You can actually figure out the, like... Some of the inconsistencies just seem exacerbated by the anime and aren't actually inconsistencies. And then on top of that, there's the time skip. So there's also the potential that Crocodile got stronger over 2 years, right? So Crocodile has this crazy spectrum of like where he might fall, which makes him a very interesting character. Like, you can't actually be wrong about Crocodile. I mean, I'm sure if somebody thinks Crocodile's like Yonko level or like Admiral level, they're probably wrong. But like, Crocodile's got a pretty generous range people can put him at now, because like, you got one batch of people who think that Crocodile regained his haki post Alabasta, and that's like him at Marineford. So that's something that a lot of people believe, which has like a decent amount of reasoning behind it. And then on top of that, you could argue that like if he didn't regain his haki, he might have gained it during the time skip, or he regained his haki from Marineford, and then he also got stronger from the time skip. So like, there's a lot of arguments you can spin with Crocodile. We haven't seen him fight though. Grizzly Adams, thanks to the 5. Sabo has the potential to be Admiral level, but he's not there yet. Future Sight and Awakening would probably get him there. Yeah, my take with Sabo has always been that I think end of story, Sabo's final match, it's not always my take, but I think recently as I started trying to figure out people's final matchup takes, I think Sabo's final matchup is going to be Greenbull. I think Sabo's ceiling will be him reaching Admiral level, because he's not a Conqueror's Haki user, so he's not going beyond that. Sabo's ceiling should be Admiral level, and like, to get to the Admiral that he'd most reasonably be able to get to in that point in time is Greenbull. And Oda kind of paralleled the Greenbull Sabo situation in that Greenbull is introduced the same, like, the Greenbull chapters coincide with Sabo Flame Emperor, so like, you know, Oda's kind of been doing this thing where he does like half and half, so like he'll have half a chapter Blackbeard, half a chapter Shanks, and that kind of sets up that parallel. He'll do half a chapter Garling, half a chapter Dragon. Like, the chapters tend to focus on these characters that seem like they could be good matchups for each other down the line. That was the same with Greenbull and Sabo, Flame Emperor versus Greenbull's introduction. And it does seem like realistically, if Sabo could get strong enough to fight an Admiral in that period of time, it would be Greenbull, because Sabo has the type advantage. We already saw that fire is somewhat effective against Greenbull. So if there's one Admiral that Sabo could take down by end of story, I think it's Greenbull. If Sabo is to beat Akainu, like some people think, that'd just be fucking insane. Sabo being like Marineford Whitebeard level by the end of the story, without having any Conqueror's Haki. I just don't imagine that being possible. Iro, thanks to the 5. I disagree with using feats at face value off of Blackbeard and Blackbeard only, because Blackbeard struggled with Luffy, then beat Ace High Diff, a second commander. I think that is actually a fair argument, because Blackbeard can get caught off guard with a lot of things. But I'd say that one thing that's interesting about Blackbeard is that he's usually pretty good at... How do I say this? Blackbeard usually doesn't take a fight if he is confident the character is stronger than him. And I think that that's a pretty notable aspect, in that, like, Blackbeard, even with his whole crew, didn't feel confident fighting Akainu. So he didn't fight Akainu, right? Blackbeard, even with his whole crew, didn't feel confident fighting Shanks. Didn't fight Shanks, right? Blackbeard, even with his whole crew, he felt like fighting Marco. Like, Blackbeard didn't feel like fighting Rayleigh, right? Old Man Rayleigh, for example. So that's a pretty good indicator to me that Blackbeard... old Rayleigh thinks that Blackbeard would beat him there, but he implies that it's because of his age, right? I don't think Blackbeard scales to, like, Prime Rayleigh. And I don't think Blackbeard thinks that... Like, Blackbeard doesn't think that Blackbeard scales to Prime Rayleigh. When Blackbeard's feeling confident, he will take a fight. That is usually what we see. He felt confident he would beat Ace, so he fought Ace. He felt confident he'd beat Law, so he fought Law, right? Sometimes he can be overconfident. Like, he thought that he was strong enough to take old Whitebeard because Whitebeard was nearly dead, but he couldn't, right? So to me, it feels like if Blackbeard is not confident he can beat somebody, I think that's a pretty good indicator that it would be a tough fight for him. Reverse 6K, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 7 months. The Gears shirt came in and it's fire. I'm glad you like it. I really like the shirts because they're really, really good quality. They're produced by Gomu. They're on Instagram and everything like that. So the quality of the shirts is really, really good. And and they're sold out now, but we've got a new... I kind of want to show you guys the preview of the... because I have the next shirt from Gomu right here. Literally right here, it came in. So that'll be... the pre-orders for that'll be open up soon. But for the moment, I don't think I'm allowed to show it. Off topic, where do you think Garling is? Do you think there's an ancient weapon on God Valley and he's standing watch? I mean, like... I feel like Garling and the other God's Knights are nearby. One was sent to watch the kids, and then Somers came to just harass Shaki. So I feel like it's not like Garling in particular is necessarily somewhere special. I think the God's Knights as a whole just haven't quite assembled there just yet. Nicholas, thanks for the 2. Dorian Brogy are tossing around Gorsay Crocodile. Gorsay Crocodile. Warcury? Oh, because you're saying Warcury's inconsistent? Yeah. Maybe Warcury's just bad at offense, but he's really good at defense. Paul, thanks for the 5. Roger only cares for his Nakama as a genocide takes place. Garp just wants to spar. Dragon stands out as the true hero. Your analysis is spot on. Thanks, man. It's kind of crazy how, like, Roger's going through all of these, like, funny gags with him and Gabon, like, crying over Shaki and Roger's crew running him over and stuff like that. And, like, the Roger parts are, like, this clown show. And Garp's running around talking about, like, I'm gonna catch these fine fish and stuff. And then you have Dragon on the ground just having this, like, existential crisis. Like, he's lying there like he's in the middle of Gaza right now or something like that. While all of these gag characters that are joking around and treating it like... It's like Garp right now is essentially... Sorry, not Garp. Dragon right now is essentially going through what Kobe was going through at the end stages of Marineford. That sort of existential crisis. He's going through that. But imagine if you mixed Marineford with, like... I don't know, like the fucking long ring, long land levels of seriousness from, like, the Roger Pirates and, like, the Garp squad and everything like that. It's, like, a bit of a total shift. And then you got Rocks out there also. I don't know. But I think the whole tone of everything is going to get more serious after this. To be fair to the Roger Pirates, I don't think they're even fully processing. Like, keep this in mind. Whitebeard before this whole God Valley incident started, Whitebeard said that he thought that the Celestial Dragon hunting competitions were a rumor, right? So I imagine the Roger Pirates don't even know the details of what the fuck's happening on this island. I think they just know about Shaki, maybe. Or maybe they're fixated. Maybe they don't know the details of everything that's going to happen, you know? So maybe that's something to consider to give them a pass. Meek, thanks for the 2. How would you amend your Rocks is in Blackbeard theory now? I think maybe... Now I amend it to maybe it's fucking Davy Jones in there or some shit. I think that would be cool. I don't think Rocks is in Blackbeard at this point because, like, while it could still happen, right? Like, that still... The whole scenario could still play out and it still be true because it does seem like Blackbeard has multiple souls in him, right? That does seem to be the case. But at the same time, the tricky thing about the whole thing is that if Rocks was in Blackbeard, Rocks isn't that bad of a guy. So let's say it's the final battle between Blackbeard versus Luffy, and Rocks' persona comes out. Rocks and Luffy are just going to be like, hey, let's go fuck up Emu. Fuck that guy, you know? I don't know. I mean, Rocks became best friends with Harold after one clash. So, like, I think Rocks could kind of just tell who's a real one. I don't know. Ginny told everyone. Ah, shit, you're right. I don't have a good explanation for the Roger Pirates other than, yeah, they're just not real heroes. Masio5, thanks for the 2. Saturn is low-key a Zoro victim without regen. I agree. Without regen, Saturn's the victim of a lot of characters. Iroh, thanks to the 5. There's some inconsistencies, of course. Blackbeard was confident in beating Garp and Sengoku, and Rayleigh also implied the situation crew as leverage was why Blackbeard left. So the Garp and Sengoku thing, that is the one big exception to the whole Blackbeard, like, he's sort of calculated with his risks to a degree, and is only overconfident when he has an overwhelming advantage. But the the Garp Sengoku thing, that is somewhat explained because Blackbeard basically goes into a euphoric state after he eats Whitebeard's devil fruit. So after he eats Whitebeard's devil fruit, Blackbeard's literally like, I feel like all powerful. I feel like I can do anything to this world. So he has such an absurd rush of power that he doesn't think that he can lose in that moment, basically. Shanks arriving is sort of like a wake-up call. Like, Blackbeard in that moment literally thinks that he's the strongest character in the world because he's literally like, nobody can stop me, nothing, blah, 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 blah. I can do anything I want to this world. He thinks the fruit is, like, in the moment, the elation of getting the fruit and now having the 2 fruits makes him kind of go a little bit power crazy, right? So that's his mental state in the moment. That's not reflective of his usual mental state when he's calculating, can I take ace? Let me set up this ambush for Law. I'm confident I can take Law. Okay, I don't think I can do this. I don't think this is a good idea. Like, Akainu's here. I want to leave, etc., right? In that moment, Blackbeard actually did think that he can beat all the Marines here, right? But then you give him some time. Akainu shows up and everything on that island later on. Blackbeard's like, crap, don't want to fight Akainu right now, running away, right? So I'd say Blackbeard in the Garp Sengoku scene, pretty explicitly it's spelled out that this is not his usual mental state, right? This is basically him feeling as though right now he is the world's strongest man, but he's not. Just needed a bit of a moment of kind of like waking up out of his delusions. Anuj Agrawal, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 36 months, man. How do you think Emu possessed Gunko scales to Gunko? Even with your theory of Roger/Rocks teaming up versus Gunko Emu, could Emu be somehow stronger? Okay, so I'm going to assume that you mean how does Emu possess Gunko scale to actual Emu? I think we're going to have to wait and see, because I think I initially assumed that Emu possessed Gunko wouldn't be Emu's true powers, but now my feeling is this. My feeling is twofold. I think it will be a showcase of Emu's full powers. Okay, that's number one. I think it will be a showcase of Emu's full powers. And number two, I think that Luffy and the Straw Hats at Elbaf are not going to be able to defeat Emu straight up. So that's why I think it'll be more of a display of... Because, how to explain? If it's a weakened version of Emu, right, then you can just have Luffy defeat him at Elbaf, right? But I think this version of Emu will still be Emu's true powers. It seems to be displaying like a crazy amount of haki, probably Emu level of haki, and Emu's Devil Fruit abilities, right? I think the Elbaf incident will be resolved with Brook's music driving Emu out of Gunko's body. I think that's why Oda set up that whole plot line in advance. I don't think Luffy is going to be able to defeat Emu-possessed Gunko, because I think it will be representative of Emu's full strength, or at least very, very close. I think this would also be the only way that you get to see how Rox and Roger scale to Emu. So if it's like a neutered version of Emu, that doesn't really give us an idea. So, maybe I'm speaking also from like hope, because I do hope it's Emu's full powers, but I just look at it kind of like, if it's Emu's full powers, that just checks off so many other things, because it allows us to see how Rox and Roger do against Emu, then it allows us to see how Luffy does against Emu. Luffy's probably not supposed to beat Emu yet, so it allows that to be a plot point, why Luffy can't beat Emu and save Elbaf just like that. And it validates the setup of like Brook having a personal connection to Gunko, as it gives Oda an out as to how this Emu-possessed Gunko can be dealt with without them actually being strong enough to defeat Emu yet. Jarence Rambo, thanks for the 5. Sorry not to keep disturbing the stream, but why did you say there are some pretty good reasons for why Croc might have regained haki after Alabasta? Oh, man. Okay, so this is going to derail slightly. The Crocodile, Alabasta... So, like, Crocodile between Alabasta and Marineford, there's two ways you can view it. There's people who believe that Crocodile in Marineford is a lot stronger than he was in Alabasta. And I don't know where I sit. Because I view it as there's two roads that are valid explanations. The people who think Crocodile Marineford is stronger think that Crocodile has gotten haki again. Because the argument is that maybe you lose your haki if your will is broken. We know Crocodile's will was broken, right? At some point in the past by Whitebeard. And so the Crocodile that we see in Alabasta is now a Crocodile that's basically had his ego checked, right? His ambitions checked. But the argument is that Crocodile from Impel Down, like, regained his ambitions and his will. That's why we see Crocodile ready to try and tackle the New World again and everything like that. And so maybe Crocodile's haki is returned. And that would explain some things that people view in Marineford as being much more impressive than what Crocodile showed at Alabasta. For example, at Marineford, Crocodile clashes with Doflamingo. He takes a hit from Jozu. He attacks Akainu. He lands an attack on Akainu and everything. However, there's the flip side of things where you could also very much argue that nothing that Crocodile does at Marineford is actually that crazy. It just seems crazy because Crocodile's talking shit the whole time. But in terms of actual feats, if you break it down one by one, Crocodile tanking a hit from Jozu isn't actually that big of a deal because Luffy tanks like 1,000,000 times more damage over the course of Marineford than that one Jozu hit. He takes fucking hits from Kizaru, like multiple light speed kicks from Kizaru, a full-on punch from Sengoku, shit ton of Vice Admirals, all that shit. Luffy takes, like, not getting knocked out by a hit from, like, a really strong character doesn't mean that much. If Oda's, like, not paying that much attention to durability. And Luffy's rubber is a dumb excuse because all these characters would fucking use Haki against Luffy. They know he's rubber. So like they're fucking aware. They know he's rubber, right? Luffy's getting hit by attacks that fucking hurt him, right? It's made clear that these attacks actually affect him, right? So Crocodile tanking Jozu isn't actually that big of a deal. It's consistent with Luffy's scaling. Luffy's still actually shown to have higher durability. Crocodile clashing with Mihawk is really an anime-only thing. In the manga, Crocodile attacks Mihawk and Crocodile attacks Doflamingo. Crocodile clashing with Doflamingo is an anime-only thing because Crocodile attacks Doflamingo and Doflamingo stops him with his foot in the manga. Not really a big deal, right? It's the anime portrays it more as an even clash. The manga is just like Doflamingo just stops Crocodile with his foot, which is basically the easiest, most low diff way you can use to stop a character. And yeah, that's pretty much it, right? Finally, Crocodile uses an attack like his sand attack to cut Akainu. But if Akainu is off guard and focused on other shit, then yeah, this sand fruit is a powerful Logia fruit. It cutting Akainu is not a big deal. And then the biggest point against Crocodile is that he gets speed blitzed by Gear 2 Luffy in Marineford. So, like, that seems like, literally that's how his whole thing, for some reason people look at Crocodile's good moments, his cool moments in Marineford, but they ignore that the whole fight, like, Marineford War literally, Crocodile's tenure in Marineford literally starts with him trying to attack Whitebeard, like trying to blitz Whitebeard, and then Luffy's even faster and blitzes him first and stops him. So it looks like actually a Gear 2 Luffy could take Crocodile, which would be consistent with the Alabasta scaling. So there's two lenses you can look at the Crocodile shit. It's like, you could, if you wanted to headcanon that Crocodile here in Marineford is way stronger than he was in Alabasta because now he's gotten Haki back, everything can line up to fit that view. If you want to headcanon that Crocodile is still the same strength he was as Alabasta as he is in Marineford, everything can still line up in that view because nothing he does is actually inconsistent with what he showed at Alabasta. It just, he seems to get a pretty badass portrayal in terms of like the portrayal, like the aura Oda gives him seems to be pretty high for an Alabasta victim. But in terms of his actual feats, like what he does, it can all be justified. It's all still kind of consistent. It would feel more right if he had Haki, but it's still not crazy if he doesn't have Haki. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's a long tangent. But you see what I'm saying? Like, there's arguments for either that both make sense. I try not to think about it. Growth Stonks, thanks for the 5. Hey, Morge, have you seen that old Don Quixote King in chapter 726 looks identical to Blackbeard's first post-time script appearance in 903? I think he has that soul. That's kind of crazy. 903. Let's see. I don't know how to read into any of that. I don't know what that means. Oh, you're saying Blackbeard reading the newspaper, right? No, I think that's just Oda's silhouette shit. Okay, alright, that's enough. Let's get into this shit. Alright? Enough wasting time. Not that we're wasting time. It's never a waste of time talking random One Piece stuff, but we are wasting time. Alright, here we go. Give me a second here. Yeah. Okay. All right. Here we go. I'm going to move this over. All right. Here we go. Okay. So, I think the fun way to do it is all characters, right? All characters that might show up at God Valley. Because otherwise we just got... Because if we did just straight up, right? If we did just straight up, then it's probably right now, on the island at this moment, it's probably Garp, Roger, Whitebeard / Garling, Whitebeard / Garling, I assume Rayleigh, and then from here it might get contentious, because my take is that next would be, oh no, maybe it's Gabon. I'd say either Shiki / Gabon. Shiki / Gabon. We'll do votes. We'll vote it out, all right? Well, I'm just putting my stuff down. Big Mom, Kaido, Silver Axe. That's my take at the moment. And then I think the rest of the Gods and Knights fall below that. Okay? Saturn is also here. I feel like Saturn might be here, because we know Saturn's at God Valley. So that's my take, but we can do votes for this. And then after that, we could maybe add in... Oh, fuck. I fucking forgot the most important character of them all. I think Rox is number one. Here, let's do a quick poll. Let's do the poll. Fuck, where'd my chat go? Here we go. All right. Let's do a poll. I forgot Rox, yeah. Forgot the most important character. Name. Thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 36 months, man. Bogoat greater than equal to Rayleigh plus Scopper at God Valley. While Garp fights Roger, Bogoat holds it down versus the rest of Roger's crew. Trustmark definitely finna be canon. Hey, if Bogard turns out to actually be strong... man. Okay, adding Gunko. Yeah, right now I'm doing just at God Valley. If we want to throw in the others, we can throw in the others. Okay, how about Garp versus Roger? My take is personally... At the end of God Valley, Roger will be stronger. Yeah, I lean Garp as well. Even in their little clash that they had in that earlier chapter, people were like mostly like, you get the sense it's supposed to be like they're equal, but it kind of looks like Roger looks like he got the worst end of that little clash. Like Roger kind of looks kind of doofy in it, whereas Garp just looks like he tanked a clean hit, you know? I don't know if we're supposed to read into that much. Like, maybe Oda intended it to be a purely equal clash, but he just accidentally drew Roger looking a little bit worse. But if we add in just Garp's aura and feats right now, against, like, with other characters, it does seem like Garp, right? Okay, here's where it gets interesting. I think everybody, there's no point in doing Roger, Whitebeard, right? I think most people assume Roger's above Whitebeard here right now. Whitebeard or Garling right now. Whitebeard, Garling. So this is interesting because it does feel like Garling is the main villain of the show so far, right? Like he's the bad guy, right? Garling's got Garling's got aura. He seems like he's set to be an important, strong character. But Whitebeard is Whitebeard, right? This is before Whitebeard reached prime Whitebeard status, but he should still be stronger than Marineford Whitebeard since he can use Conqueror's Haki. So this is Whitebeard close to his prime. Like, he was clashing with Roger and everything just this last chapter. Like, basically, this is still a Whitebeard that is a significant challenge to Roger. Oh, but people are riding the Garling train pretty hard. Okay, I could see that, especially if Garling does, in fact, give Whitebeard that fabled scar here. It would make sense. Grizzly Adams, thanks for the 5. Could the Gorsay strength be related to proximity to Emu? Not a huge difference, but enough to make Egghead make sense. I don't think so. Personally, I don't think so. Again, I think, look, for where I think the Gorsay, like, just so, I haven't dropped this full video yet, but my personal view is that the Gorsay are characters who are set to be opponents for a lot of the significant top-tier side characters in One Piece. Like Dragon, maybe a Kainu, Mihawk, stuff like that, okay? I think the Gorsay are set to be defeated by those characters, okay? As such, I think the Gorsay strength is exactly where it kind of needs to be. In that, one, Gorsay level I don't think is a thing. I think the Gorsay have a nice range. Like, Saturn really isn't that... Like, look at how easily Luffy can beat up Saturn without problem versus Warcury, right? Like, there's a strong range there, right? There's a pretty wide range. So I think, like, let's say Garling is like Yonko, like high Yonko level or whatever. I think Warcury is at a strength level that flirts with Yonko level, if that makes sense. In that, like, you know, Luffy can't damage him at the moment as far as we can see. He's got crazy Conqueror's Haki or whatever. Venus Juro probably flirts with Yonko level. Mars, I think, is at least, like, Mars seems like he might be Admiral level or whatever. And then I think from there on, you start to get deteriorating results where, like, Jupiter, if he is Admiral level, it's probably towards the very bottom. And then, or like barely Admiral level or something. And then Saturn is like somebody else said earlier, if Saturn didn't have regen, would he even be like as strong as an Admiral? It's hard to say. Keep in mind, when Saturn arrived, he did have crazy Conqueror's Haki that like had the entire island on high alert. So I think it's just his actual combat fighting style. It's just not that good for some reason. Marco's saying, thanks a lot. Rocks greater than Roger, greater than Garp, greater than Whitebeard, equal to Garling. I kind of have that. Equal to Rayleigh, greater than Gaban, equal to Shiki, greater than Big Mom, equal to Silver Axe, equal to Kaido. This is actually I like this ranking quite a bit. Although I do think Big Mom is stronger than Silver Axe and Kaido right now. Because Big Mom is older than Kaido. Big Mom should clearly be stronger than Kaido right now. She's still big sisters him, you know? Yeah, but yours is actually very close to what I think. Because I think Rock's greater than Roger. I think Roger is a little... Or, no, sorry, actually... No, I swapped some. Never mind. I misread the beginning. I think Rock's greater than Garp. Like, okay. I mean, what I think is basically what I put up earlier, right? I thought Rock's greater than Garp, greater than Roger. I thought Garling and Whitebeard might be even right now. I thought then Rayleigh. I thought then Shiki or Gaban. I thought then Big Mom. I think then Saturn. And then I think Kaido, and then I think Silver Axe. Rayleigh's not equal to Garling, no. I swear people sleep on Rayleigh, man. You know who's been the hero of this God Valley incident so far? Rayleigh. He's been the hero. Okay, next up. I don't think there's a point in doing a poll for Rayleigh versus Gaban. Because I think pretty much everybody assumes that either Rayleigh and Gaban are equal or Rayleigh is stronger, right? So I think the more useful thing to do is do Rayleigh versus Shiki. And then and then do Shiki versus Gaban, depending on how that goes. All right. We got Rayleigh coming through. All right. All right, Gaban versus Shiki. Shiki was a Yonko, bro. He's stronger than Rayleigh. Prime Rayleigh is definitely Yonko level. No doubt. Prime Rayleigh? No doubt. Like, keep in mind, old Rayleigh, I don't even understand how people underestimate Rayleigh. Like, Rayleigh has literally all of the hype. Like, literally all of the hype. Like, he's clear Yonko level hype. Garp is literally talking about Rayleigh and Whitebeard, two legends that the Marines can't take. You think he's talking about that if, like, Prime Rayleigh is Admiral level? Old Rayleigh was stalemating Kizaru. Old Rayleigh. Like, 80-year-old fucking, like, way past his Prime Rayleigh is stalemating an Admiral. How would Prime Rayleigh not be stronger than him? Fucking old Rayleigh. Blackbeard was still intimidated by. Old Rayleigh. Fucking 80, 90-year-old Rayleigh. A current Yonko was worried about him. Way past his prime. How would Prime Rayleigh not be Yonko level? That doesn't make any fucking sense. That doesn't, like, what the fuck? This is tight. I'll give it a little bit longer. The Lowman said Kizaru had Rayleigh huffing. Yeah, nobody's saying that Rayleigh could have beaten Kizaru. But Kizaru also couldn't get past Rayleigh. Right? I'm sure if Kizaru went, like, absolute balls to the wall all out, he could get past Rayleigh. But it was established that it's a stalemate. Rayleigh's slowly getting tired. But this is old-ass Rayleigh. Right? Old-ass Rayleigh. Prime Rayleigh would be on another level. Prime Rayleigh is way stronger than that. 10k, thanks for the 5. People seem to think Shiki is Roger level because of his overblown impel down feat. I mean, it's weird because I think Shiki gets overrated, underrated at points. I think Prime Shiki, like, I'd go this far. I see no reason why Prime Shiki wouldn't be above Kaido and Big Mom's primes. Like, the way I view it is, like, out of these old legends, like, the only reason we don't think higher of Shiki is because he wasn't part of the modern story. He's not part of the modern story, right? That's it. That's the only reason. And, like, the era that he existed in, he wasn't the top dog, right? But the thing is, the era that he was in was the most competitive era. Like, he had to compete in an era with Prime Roger and Prime Whitebeard. So, like, the fact that Shiki even was part of the big three with them, to me, that's a bigger deal than, like, Kaido and Big Mom in their primes. Because Kaido and Big Mom in their primes, they're, like, competing with, like, ancient Whitebeard, you know? King says, no way Shiki is over Prime Kaido. I just don't know why. What's the reason why? Again, Shiki was one of the big three with Prime Roger, Prime Whitebeard, right? That's established in the Ace novels. That doesn't mean he's equal, but you look at the things he did, like his fleet nearly defeated the Roger Pirates in their prime. I don't know. He was one of Rox's two wings from what it looked like. Kaido and Big Mom are viewed as like the second banana to old Whitebeard, you know? Shiki was just in a more competitive era. Like, Kaido got the title of like the reputation of world's strongest, but it's doesn't mean as much when like all the old legends disappear, you know? Like if everybody else who was higher up in the pecking order is gone, now Kaido's got the title. Shadow67 says, no, Kizaru was the one stalemating. Really wanted to help the Straughts, but couldn't get out of the fight with Kizaru. Kizaru was trying to get to the Straughts first. It's literally, it's a mutual fucking stalemate. Literally, Kizaru actually tries to ignore Rayleigh and go after the Straw Hats. Rayleigh has to intercept his beam of light, stop him, and then the battle continues because Rayleigh stops Kizaru from getting any further. Kizaru literally points out that he is stalling, that Rayleigh is stalling Kizaru from getting any further. Rayleigh also wants to go help, but both of them have their hands tied. It's really not that complicated of a scene. This is the crazy thing. This is what I mean by like, and I think we're just going to have to put Shiki above Gaban here. Sorry, Sanji fans, the people have spoken. But Gaban will be the next slot. Fear not. Gaban will be the next slot. Unless, I guess I got to put him against Big Mom, but please vote the right way here. It's fucking Gaban. Come on now. It's really not that complicated. Like, if you just take agendas out of it, if you just read it, like, read it blank slate, man. Read everything that character A is stating is their intention, right? Character A being Kizaru, their intention, their goal, how they're feeling about the situation, yada yada. Read everything character B is stating about their intention, goal, how much they're struggling, right? All you have with Kizaru versus Rayleigh is character B is able to stalemate character A, but character B is struggling, and it's implied that over time they'll gradually run out of stamina. Character A is acknowledging that character B is successfully stalemating them and preventing them from their goal. That's it, right? And the most important thing that's established is that character B is way weaker than they once were, right? And character A even acknowledges that. That's it. Clear hierarchy. Kizaru, greater than Rayleigh, but implication, Prime Rayleigh, way higher than this level. And that's it. People have so many agendas. They're like, we gotta come up with some reasons. Reasons not written into the story, not implied in the story. Reasons why Kizaru could have just squashed Rayleigh like a bug, but he just didn't want to. Reasons in our head. Not in the author's head, not in Kizaru's head, but reasons in our head why this is the case. Because we just like Kizaru. That's literally what I feel like I'm arguing with. And then people are like, Morge, we don't like your power scaling. It's like, yeah, because I don't fucking like... I just cope at what's on the page, man. Character A, character B, what's stated here, handicaps established, level of struggle established, outcome established, done. That's it. Not that complicated. All right. Prime Rayleigh scales to Kaido? Fuck yeah. I don't think you guys are getting it. This is Dark King Rayleigh. This is Roger Zoro. This is the Zoro of the previous generation. I watched what current Zoro did to Kaido. If current Zoro is doing that to Kaido, literally, I don't even know how to use Conqueror's Haki. Zoro did that to Kaido. Rayleigh is dicing that dude up. He's sashimi. Kaido historically does not do well against swordsmen, by the way. Oden, who I think Rayleigh is definitely stronger than. And yeah, sure, Kaido's probably got stronger since then. But then Big Mom fought to a draw. Fucking noob-ass Zoro with like his clumsy, I don't even know I have Conqueror's Haki. Whoops. Fucking permanently scarred you for life. The fuck is... We're talking about Rayleigh. This is prime Zoro of the previous generation. Oh my god. I don't know how you can look at Kaido versus Zoro and then be like, yeah, but I don't think Prime Rayleigh could do that. The Lowman thinks the two. Then old Rayleigh could stalemate a Yonko too. What? Why? The fuck? How would old Rayleigh be able to stalemate a Yonko? If Prime Rayleigh is Yonko level, then old Rayleigh stalemating an Admiral makes sense. Right? Why doesn't that follow? All right, let's do this poll. Tonga Tapu says the Ray glaze is insane. I don't glaze Rayleigh. The story glazes Rayleigh. You know what fucking glazed Rayleigh before me? Garp. First thing Garp says. Can the Marines take on two legends at the same time? Whitebeard Rayleigh. He's literally referring them to... He's putting Rayleigh in the same fucking category as Whitebeard, dude. What is the... Like... And then people act weird that I want to do that. I'm not saying Rayleigh is equal to Prime Whitebeard, but yeah. Step below his captain? Yeah. Prime Yonko level for sure. Prime Whitebeard, Prime Roger, they're a tier above the Yonko, right? I'm not saying Rayleigh's a tier above, but like... Yeah, definitely beating Prime Kaido. So Prime really above Old Whitebeard if we assume Kaido greater than Old Whitebeard? Yeah. Old Whitebeard, there's a lot of characters probably above Old Whitebeard. Okay. Oda glazes Rayleigh lol. Yeah. Oda does glaze Rayleigh a lot. Like, I don't know why people are confused by this. It's just Zoro of the previous generation. Alright, let's do it. Although, for me personally, I think I'm going to catch myself here. Old Marineford Whitebeard, I think is very, very difficult for me to scale. Very, very difficult for me to scale. I don't like scaling Old Marineford Whitebeard. Because I don't know exactly what Oda wants us to think of him. I think he's a complicated character to scale. So I'm gonna set Old Marineford Whitebeard aside. I think that's a tricky one. Meek says Oda literally made Rayleigh Luffy's teacher. That is some insane glaze y'all are forgetting. Yeah, exactly. Rayleigh's the fucking master sensei of this story. Like, what more do you... Rayleigh's the wise old sensei. All right, let's do Gabon versus Big Mom at God Valley. Marineford Whitebeard is above Admiral. I think Marineford Whitebeard is very, very difficult to place. I think it requires too many hoops to jump through in terms of like, how do you take into account this versus this interaction with the Kaido at the end versus the face thing versus that. I don't know. Gabon. All right, we got Gabon. All right, what about Big Mom versus Saturn? King AP07 says, so Prime Rayleigh can beat current Gear 5 Luffy if we include the time limit? I don't know what people are really struggling with. Prime... What are people so confused by? You realize that Gear 5 Luffy couldn't even handle, like, Warcury, right? Like, what is the confusion here? Prime Rayleigh, like, just Zoro of past generation. That's it. That's all you gotta just put that in your heads, right? Zoro of past generation. Consider, like, look at Luffy versus Kizaru, and then consider that Rayleigh, like, in his old age, right? In Rayleigh's old age, stalemating Kizaru to some degree, right? Can he beat Kizaru? No. But you make Rayleigh, like, what, 2x that strong? He's probably doing better than Prime Luffy, than current Gear 5 Luffy did against Kizaru. All right. Okay, so things are shaking out how I personally think. Okay, Saturn versus Kaido. So my take is Saturn because I don't think Kaido's got Conquer Saki shit down yet. All right. We got Saturn, and then lastly, we got Kaido and Silver Axe. I think this one will be interesting. I think Kaido's a lot stronger here than people think. Because one thing that was interesting was, yeah, just portrayal wise, there's been moments where, like, in general, it just feels like Kaido's already part of Rox's Big Four, not Silver Axe. Damn. People really reading Silver Axe like that. I just don't know. Okay, then where do we want to put Silver Axe? Where do we want to put Silver Axe? Um, okay. Here. Where should we move Silver Axe? Um, I'll give you options. Above Saturn, above Big Mom, above Gabon. Those are the options. I personally think at best you can have. Oh, whoops! Hold on. I missed the most important option. I should have just done. Hold on. Where to put Silver Axe? Above Saturn? No, above Kaido. Above Saturn. Above Big Mom. Above Gabon. And I think that's the highest he can be put. So either we can put him, he and Kaido swap, he moves above Saturn, he moves above Big Mom, or he moves above Gabon. All right, so it looks like based on this, majority are placing him somewhere above Saturn, and it becomes more hesitant after that. All right. Yeah, I feel like this is solid. I just think portrayal wise, Kaido is already being put above Silver Axe, and like I think people are too fixated on Kaido being young, but like I think people forget that. So Kaido, I think Kaido is intended to. I think he's intended to scale with Oden age wise, and like, because Kaido and Oden same age, they're parallel figures, both monsters as kids. Like they're very very strong as kids, right? Kaido was like a huge war asset already as a child. Oden was fucking up all of Wano as a child. Um, they're both the same age, scaled to the same thing. And then when they have their duel and everything, they're like similar footing, right? So I do think Oden and Kaido's age is strength is meant to probably be a good measuring stick for one another at their various ages. And like, you know, this was Oden at age 18, you know? Age 18 Oden was like cutting up a mountain-sized boar. So you add a few more years or whatever. age 21 Oden. This is just something to think about. I'm not saying it's like an exact whatever, but I think Kaido's probably stronger than people think right now. And then there's other things too, which is like, let's see. Maybe 10:55. Oh, whoops. Probably 11:55. My bad. Nah. So like, all the pirates are at this island. They're running away and shit. Shiki drops a bomb. Then Whitebeard gets pissed and shakes the entire island. So Whitebeard gets pissed, shakes the entire island. And then the only characters unscathed from this whole... It's like a whole silly, just turn of events type thing, but it does some things. It kind of establishes that Whitebeard's power is like really next level compared to the other pirates here. Whitebeard and Kaido are unscathed. I guess you could argue that's because Kaido was in there with Whitebeard, so it's fine. But like already at this point, the bomb and stuff, like Kaido's kind of got his invincible physical stuff going for him because like the bomb didn't affect him. And like, I don't know. I just feel like it's soft stuff, but I feel like these two guys are stronger than this dude. I'm not saying they all got hit by the same shit, but I mean, these guys got hit by a bomb and then this guy didn't. Or he did. He did? Was he also in there and got hit by the bomb? He was in there and got hit by the bomb. Yeah. I mean, like, obviously that maybe Silver Axe doesn't have invincible skin like Kaido does. Yeah, and then Shiki's cool. Like, Shiki's unaffected by this whole incident because he can fly. Which, again, that's not like a combat thing. Like, he has the convenience of flying. But, like, I just think portrayal-wise, Oda's kind of making some Rocks pirates look a little cooler than others. People are saying you can't use this stuff. I'm not saying this. We have almost nothing to go off of. So, like, it's not like I saw this and I was like, oh my god, Kaido's above Silver Axe or anything. But I saw, like, once you start seeing the consistent portrayal, then it feels like, okay, like, the big boy pirates of the crew are, like, it feels like, now we add in the recent chapter, it really does feel like the big boy pirates of the crew are these guys. Like, it doesn't feel like random portrayal to me. It doesn't feel like Silver Axe is supposed to be here, because if he was, then Oda would have put him in here, right? I do feel like, portrayal-wise, it's supposed to feel like these characters are a bigger deal than the other more run-of-the-mill Rocks pirates that are running around here. Obviously, like, they've joined ranks and stuff here. Silver Axe is still bickering with Shiki and everything, but I'm just saying, like, it feels like Oda highlighted the 4 biggest players of the Rocks pirates already. I don't know. That's just my feeling, but it's hard to say. All right, everybody. All right. Does anybody have big issues with the list? Dave says those are meta characters, though. I mean, you could argue that, but at the same time, like, how do I say this? It's the confluence of all factors, right? So they are the meta characters, but they're also not the meta characters randomly. They're the meta characters for a reason, right? In that they're the characters that become the emperors of the sea, right? Like, it's not like, oh, these happen to be main characters, right? Like, if we wanted to highlight, like, if you're seeing a shot with Straw Hats, like, you see Nami, Chopper, Usopp, yada, yada, right? Like, these are characters that are meta in the sense that they're also the strongest characters, right? They become the strongest characters, right? So you could argue, well, that doesn't mean that they're all the strongest right now, and that's true, but then you also look at other things, right? Which is, Kaido was established to be freakishly strong from a young age, much like Big Mom. Kaido is already shown to have, like, that invincible sort of durability that he develops later on. Like, Shiki throws a bomb down and it doesn't affect Whitebeard and Kaido, but it does affect Silver Axe, right? We're going with scraps here, but we have almost nothing for Silver Axe, really, whereas Oda's still trying to portray Kaido as badass. Like, if Kaido's supposed to be weak right now, Oda could portray him like Dragon, you know? Like, Dragon is a meta character that's important later, and he's basically the same age almost as Kaido, but Oda's making it, like, you can tell from portrayal that Dragon's being portrayed as a weak character right now. Oda's still kind of giving Kaido that aura alongside Kaido, like Whitebeard, Big Mom, Shiki. I would not be surprised if, like, Kaido, considering what a freak of nature he is and how fast he grows in strength, also fact that he's the same age as Oden, who's already, like, the strongest warrior in Wano and everything like that, I wouldn't be surprised if he's stronger than Silver Axe. I also take the Silver Axe, I think people are riding on the Silver Axe as the rival of Shiki thing, but, like, the rival of X character has such a wide range of meaning in One Piece that I need a little bit more. I'm not saying that Kaido is definitely stronger than Silver Axe, but I'm saying, like, in terms of portrayal, Oda is definitely trying to make Kaido look more badass. And there's no real reason to do that, because as we see from Dragon, if a character that's going to be strong later is not strong now, Oda will happily portray them as weak for that point in time, you know? Like, the portrayal does actually usually line up with how strong the character is supposed to be perceived. Does that make sense? Stop jumping around, the cope is too strong with you. I'm just pointing out, like, if Oda wanted to portray Kaido as, like, the weaker cabin boy type figure on the crew, he could have done that. Again, just look at like, would you agree there's Dragon's also a meta important character in the future, but there's a big difference. But, like, if a character's not strong yet, they don't get that sort of hype portrayal. Kaido is being portrayed alongside these the other big hitters of the Rock's crew. Silver Axe isn't. That's all I'm saying, you know? Kingling Demi-Human says because you're biased against them? What? Ace Prolific says you're smart, Morge, very good points, but I like my agenda more. Hey, as long as you're honest with it, that's okay. Oh, Marco was arguing with someone else, Morge, I think. Oh, I get it. You're speaking in circles, portrayals, perceptions, so of course they line up. I think that's, like, a very aggressively illiterate way of making an argument. If you genuinely want to argue that, like, there's Oda's putting the same effort and impact in to presenting Kaido, Big Mom, Shiki, and Whitebeard's panel to the way that he's portraying the rest of the Rocks Pirates as essentially, like, the rabble that is also there, then I don't really know what to say. Like, if you want to pretend it's the same thing, then I don't know what to say. Again, the argument for Silver Axe is just tenuous to me, because it's like, Silver Axe is Shiki's rival. What does it mean to be Shiki's rival? I think if Silver Axe gets some feats, like, if Silver Axe turns out to be, like, let me put it this way. We'll get a better idea based on who they're fighting. Like, if Silver Axe is fighting Gaban, like I initially thought, then obviously Silver Axe is stronger than Kaido right now. Okay? That's my point of view. If Silver Axe is, like, if he's matched up with Gaban or something, then that's a big deal. I think it's just that, like, ever since Silver Axe was introduced as Shiki's rival, ever since then he's basically just been treated as another Rocks pirate and not anything significant, whereas other characters get kind of, you know, Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, Shiki get portrayed in a more elevated light is what it seems like. Saint Silver says, you so tough, big bruh. All right, everybody. This stream has gone on pretty long. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This was a fun one. And I'm very curious this was all of our assumptions, right? So I'm very curious to see what it is like at the end of God Valley. At the end of God Valley, we'll likely get perspective on, who actually was stronger than whom at this point in time. And I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of God Valley, some characters have gotten stronger. So, I personally think my hot take, my prediction is I think we will see Roger number 1 out of these characters by the end of God Valley. Out of these characters. If Emu comes down, that's a different story. But out of these characters, I think Roger will reach the top. All right. The Lowman, thanks to the 2. Look up Old Rayleigh and Shanks Hockey SBS. Old Rayleigh and Shanks Hockey SBS. Is that where Oda talked about how they would both knock out, all the fishmen? Right? So if Old Rayleigh is being compared to Shanks, then isn't that just good? 10K, thanks for the 2. Prime Gaban, greater than or not as strong as Kaido? I think Prime Gaban is a toss-up between him and Kaido. I think Prime Rayleigh is above Kaido. Yeah, I think Prime Rayleigh is towards the top of Yonko tier. I think Prime Rayleigh is probably just short of, Mihawk Shanks, personally. However you want to stack Mihawk and Shanks. How do I say this? These are characters that we're confident are Pirate King tier, right? Rox, Roger, Harold, Whitebeard, Garp, right? All of them in their primes. Prime Roger, Prime Rox, Prime Whitebeard, Prime Harold, Prime Garp. Those should all be what we call Pirate King tier, okay, to me. Then there's a batch of characters that are below, I imagine to be below that, but you never know, right? In no order, Mihawk, Shanks, Dragon, potentially Garling. Then I'd probably have, let's say they're in no order. I'd say Rayleigh is maybe a little, just short of that group. And then I think you got Kaido. I think Prime Rayleigh versus Kaido is at worst a tie in my mind. Then Big Mom. Maybe Big Mom and Gaban is a tie or something. Prime Gaban. At worst. Yeah. And I think that's kind of rounding out what I would call Yonko tier. If Gaban truly was stronger than Prime Kaido, why he never dared to set foot on Wano? That's a fucking stupid question. 1, Gaban got older, right? But 2, more importantly, can Gaban solo the Beast Pirates, including Kaido? No. Here's a question. Let's say, you know what's funny? Every time somebody poses a question of why didn't X character just go to Wano then and fight Kaido or something like that, right? You realize that literally Kaido himself could not go to Wano if Kaido and his entire empire was there to stop him. Does that make sense? Prime Gaban could be exactly as strong as Prime Kaido. So imagine you got Prime Kaido here, and then you've got also Kaido and the entire Beast Pirates shacked up in Wano. You realize that Kaido himself couldn't go to Wano if Kaido and the entire Beast Pirates empire was there. Do you get what I'm saying? Do you think fighting a Yonko is literally just going to fight the Yonko? Or have you ignored the entire way that the system of One Piece works and all the effort that was put into explaining how empires work, why the Yonko are so heavily protected, why it's so difficult to fight any of them, why it takes so many forces, all of the Marines to come together to take on one Yonko crew, right? You guys get what I'm saying? Kaido could literally be, you could have a character literally a clone of Kaido himself, could not just go to Wano while the original Kaido and his crew are there. A clone of Kaido couldn't do it. Why? Because you can't beat a Yonko and the Yonko's entire crew. That's not a thing. This is just, I don't even know what to say. Whitebeard didn't pull up on Wano either. Why would Whitebeard pull up on Wano? Gaban at least expressed that he felt like going to Wano. Whitebeard's never felt like going to Wano. Why would Whitebeard go to Wano? The whole idea that, like, Whitebeard or whoever is, like, scared of going to Wano is hilarious. Because, like, you realize Whitebeard's former subordinate, Oden, already fucked up Kaido. It's like Whitebeard scared of going to Wano to fight Kaido when, like, his 2nd division commander already fucked up Kaido. You think Whitebeard would be worried about going over to Wano when, like, Kaido was out there losing to Oden? The fuck? Alright, guys. We are going to call it here. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for tuning in. This was a good stream. I'm interested to see how our takes played out at the end of God Valley. So let's take a look then. All right, everybody.